My priority is to make sure that Doug Ford is defeated.
A campaign with countless twists and turns.
I don't know who voters will choose, but I'm pretty sure that it won't be me.
All down to one day of decision.
The threshold for a governing majority, 63 seats.
Change that makes families feel secure again about the future.
We need to continue to build on the momentum that we have.
You will decide the course of this province.
Now, from Global News Studios at Corus Quay in downtown Toronto,
This is Decision Ontario.
well, good evening. The Global News Chopper over our studios at Corus Quay in downtown Toronto. A beautiful night for what is shaping up to be an exciting evening in Ontario politics. Good evening. I'm Alan Carter.
And I'm Farah Nasser, and welcome to Decision Ontario, Global's election night coverage.
The campaigning, the mudslinging, the plot twists have all come down to this moment.
In less than 60 minutes, the polls will close, and we'll learn the result of your vote.
Now, we have the three-party headquarters covered off for you. Jamie Barocker is with the Progressive Conservatives in Etobicoke, Mark Carcassole with the NDP in Hamilton, Shalima Maharaj in North York with the Liberals.
And we have reporters covering key races today as well. We're in ridings from across the GTA, from the east in Ajax to the north in York Simcoe, out west to Etobicoke and Mississauga, Brampton, and further down the 401 into Guelph.
And tonight, we're coming to you from all of our platforms, online at globalnews.ca, over the airwaves with Global News Radio, and of course, right here on your TV screen. Now, for those of you watching, here's how you can follow along. We got a clock counting down to when the polls close. Plus, right down here at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see the overall race with the leading and elected count, the chiclets, as we call them, right across the top there. And just under that, the races in the individual ridings, along with the numbers for the 124 seats. 124 ridings are up for grabs this year in Ontario. And for those of you who are listening or just watching television with your eyes closed, we'll keep you in the loop every step of the way.
And for the most immediate results, you can always go online, too, to globalnews.ca. Now, most polls across this province are going to close at 9 p.m. But Elections Ontario says there are 7 ridings experiencing problems right now. That's going to delay some of the results. They include Bay of Quinte, Essex, Glengarry, Prescott, Russell, Simcoe North, York Simcoe, York South Weston, and Kiiwetinoong. Now, once the numbers start coming in, they're going to be tracked by our decision desk. Global News is working alongside a team from Wilfrid Laurier University to break down the numbers and give you the big picture. There they are. And that's Barry Kay from Wilfrid Laurier University, who is going to be helping us break down those numbers and trends.
But ask yourself, what has happened since the last time we did this in Ontario? In 2014, at this point, Kathleen Wynne was pretty hopeful. And in a couple of hours from this point in 2014, she was over the moon because she had just won a majority government, returning the Liberals to majority status. So what happened since then? Well, there are 3 things that really have hurt the Wynne administration. The first began pretty quickly after she won that majority. The Sudbury by-election scandal. You may remember this. What happened is that the NDP MPP who had won in Sudbury in 2014, 6 months later suddenly resigned. So there was a by-election. And Miss Wynne decided that Glenn Thibeault, an NDP MP, a federal politician, would make a much better candidate for the Liberals than the young man who had previously run. And all of that ended with this: Kathleen Wynne having to go to court as a portion of the election law in Ontario was tried for the very first time. For the very first time in Ontario, a sitting premier had to go to court. She was not charged, but it was not good news for the Liberals. The other big thing that happened over the last 4 years, of course, power and hydro. Global News documented a number of cases of people having to live without any power, transporting water, trying to run generators because they simply could not afford their power and had been cut off. Midway through her through her administration, Kathleen Wynne said this is something that they just did not get on top of fast enough. The Liberals pivoted halfway through and said, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to lower everybody's hydro price on average by 25% and do that through deficit financing. But the damage had been done. And of course, the last one, cap and trade, January 1st of this year. Cap and trade comes in and your gas bill goes up about, on average, 4 cents a liter as a result. Of course, Mr. Ford has promised if he wins tonight, that is gone.
So Alan outlined some of the reasons there, but still, Kathleen Wynne started this race in it to win it. We have seen, though, a huge reversal in fortune for the Premier and leader of the Liberal Party. Let's bring in our Shalima Maharaj to talk a bit more about that. And Ms. Wynne conceded the other week that she wouldn't win. So what's the mood like? What are party faithful saying tonight?
Well, right now it's still fairly quiet. We don't have a lot of the supporters already arriving, but right now who I am joined by is Tim Murphy, campaign co-chair. So Tim, obviously one of the big shockers of this whole campaign run was the concession speech 5 days early. When you reflect on this, was this the right move and what was the impetus for it?
Well, we'll have to wait and see whether it was the right move. I mean, look, the impetus was fairly straightforward. There was a significant amount of polling data and other data we were hearing from our own candidates that there was the potential for a majority Ford government, and the only way to stop that was to elect some Liberals in a number of key seats where, frankly, the Democrats have never won that riding since Confederation. So the only way to stop them was to be able to elect a Liberal. There was some hesitancy because people said, well, I'm not sure I want to endorse the government. Say, okay, we'll take that out of the mix. You can vote for that high-quality local candidate, and frankly, we've got hundreds of, 124 of them across the province of great candidates. And what we're saying to Global News voters, the polls aren't closed yet. You can go out and try and stop a Doug Ford majority by voting Liberal.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck tonight.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll send it back to you in studio.
Okay, Shalima, thank you so much for that. We're going to go back to Jamie Morocker now. You saw her at the beginning of the show. Jamie, I'm sure a much more optimistic mood among the PCs for Doug Ford.
That's absolutely right, Farr. There's lots of excitement here today, and I have to say that we are in the center of Ford Nation. I walked around the room a little bit earlier, and it doesn't so much seem to be lifelong conservatives who are here at Congress Center, but rather hardcore Doug Ford supporters. They came here specifically to see Doug Ford, and they will be seeing him not long from now. He's set to appear here at the Congress Center and watch some of those results roll in around 9 o'clock this afternoon. We did see Doug Ford out this morning. He made his way down to the polls. He cast his ballot with his family by his side, and he is spending the first part of the evening with his family as well. We'll see more of that in just a little bit. But again, like I said, this is absolutely Ford Nation. They are all hopeful that Doug Ford is not only going to become the next premier, but that he's going to bring with him a majority government. I'll send it back into you.
Okay, Jamie Morocker and Etobicoke, thank you so much for that. We're going to go to Mark Harkisol now in Hamilton with the NDP, and Andrea Horvath is going to be there later on tonight. And this could still be a big party for her, Mark.
It could be a very big one, Farah, because they are essentially almost guaranteed a good night here. With Kathleen Wynne's concession last weekend, a lot of people feel as though they were at least pretty much handed second place by the Liberal Party. So there are a lot of NDP staffers here, and that's mostly who's filling up this room right now is a lot of the staff members. Not seen a ton of supporters yet. And then, of course, you've got us media types here as well. But there's a lot of people who feel like the worst they can do here is second place. The worst Andrea Horvath will be in Queen's Park when this night is over is the official leader of the opposition. There's also a thought, though, that with that last-minute crunch that she put out there, 1,200 kilometers on the road in the campaign bus, going all over southwestern Ontario, that she might have done enough to convince undecided voters, to bring over former Liberal voters now looking for a new home. There's a real sense of optimism here that she could very well have done it. We will see later on tonight. Andrea Horvath is expected to be here at 9 o'clock to address supporters. In what capacity? We'll find out soon. Back to you.
Okay, thanks for that, Mark. With that big bus behind Mark, he spent a lot of time in that bus during the campaign. I wonder if it's the same one. Global's chief political correspondent, David Aiken, joins us now. Thanks for being here, David.
It's fun. This is like, for political reporters, this is, we love this. Let's have another election tomorrow.
Like Super Bowl and Christmas all wrapped up.
And this has been one crazy campaign.
It certainly has. And really, it started back on January 24th when Patrick Brown called that impromptu press conference. at Queen's Park. It hasn't ended since then. The drama has just been full tilt. You're going to watch a couple of key ridings tonight.
All right, let's take a general election is going to be 124 individual races. Let's take a look at some. Peterborough-Kawartha is where we're going to start. Why? That's been a bellwether riding for most of the last 4.5 decades. Since 1977, Peterborough-Kawartha has elected a government MP. Right now, Liberal Jeff Leal is the incumbent. If the PCs win, does that mean Dave Smith comes from Peterborough? Or maybe they elect NDP Sean Conway. Who knows? Let's take a look at the riding of Milton. We want to look at this riding and other ridings like it that have a popular Liberal cabinet minister, popular in their own riding. Indira Naidoo-Harris is that. Can she hold on? Can her own popularity exceed Wynn's unpopularity? Let's move to Chatham-Kent-Leamington in the southwest. This is a straight-up blue on orange fight. Rick Nichols is the incumbent. He won by 8 points. But can the NDP take this riding? They're right on his heels, and if the NDP has any hope of government, they have to win ridings like this off the PCs in southwest Ontario, Chatham-Kent-Leamington, and Sarnia-Lambton. Finally, we're going to look at some old-timers, been around a long time. Eglinton Lawrence, Mike Cole, very popular in his own riding. He was first elected in 1995. He could lose tonight to the progressive conservative Robin Martin. He's going to have the fight of his life on his hands. There's other long-time lifers. Michael Gravel in Thunder Bay Superior North. St. Catharines, Jim Bradley, elected in 1977. He could lose tonight. What else happened in 1977? This is how long Jim's been in. The Sex Pistols released Nevermind the Bollocks. Bollocks to that.
You weren't even born then.
That's just kidding. That's nice. Well, maybe there won't be anarchy in the UK, but a little anarchy in Ontario.
Very nice.
Thank you. Eh?
Very
We're dating ourselves here. Sad.
Okay, what would an election be without a team of political strategists? And that's what we have here, giving us the behind-the-scenes view.
These three have the inside track on what's been going on through the campaign. Deb Hutton was a senior advisor to former Ontario Premiers Mike Harris and Ernie Eves. She's now corporate communications advisor. Omar Khan is a Liberal campaign strategist. He served as chief of staff for several Liberal ministers in the Dalton, McGuinty and the Wynne governments. And political commentator Tom Parkin. Tom Parkin is a former NDP staffer. Folks, great to have you here.
All right, let's start off by, I want to ask each one of you, what was the key moment in the campaign for all three of you? Let's start with you, Deb.
I think it was on day one when Ford came out of the gate extremely strong. He made his first commitment, a costed commitment about GTA transit on day one. And I think that showed that he was ready to go. Keep in mind, if Mr. Ford wins tonight, he will only have been leader of our party for less than 100 days. And that's a pretty amazing feat.
Was there a turning point for you, Tom? Something that changed the game?
Big moment, I think, for Andrea, and what really started to get her momentum launched was the release of her platform on April, I think it was April the 15th. This is something that I think the New Democrat members really liked. They could get their teeth in it. It had a lot of meat on it. There was a lot of great stuff inside of it, fully costed. Not just the items, but they also totaled it up and showed how they pay for it. This is an important thing in politics. And
jab, right?
Little jab, my friend.
Beside you.
But I think it was a great moment that people said, listen, she's putting forward a plan for governing. And then she started the dialogue about, that what we're being faced with, settling for bad and worse, and we can do something better. And I think the narrative started to climb from there.
Okay, to you, Omar. Sorry, you're last. Actually, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry.
No.
I think the Green Party is going to be below us. Look, obviously this has been a tough campaign for Ontario Liberals. It's not over yet. I think we're going to outperform expectations. But for me, the turning point was when Premier Wynne showed up to the debate and really showed that she was the only adult in the room. I think she clearly won that debate. She was the one who had substance and was respectful, I feel, to the other two candidates. But it didn't really move the numbers all that much. I think there was a modest bump, but we were really hoping to be propelled at least into second place after that performance. It didn't happen.
We just heard Tim Murphy, co-chair of the Liberals, in that live hit from the Liberal headquarters say, you can still go out and vote Liberal to stop Doug Ford.
Absolutely.
Tom, is that how this works?
Well, maybe there's a place somewhere, but we'll see what happens at the end of the night. Because of 124 ridings out there, we know that the vast majority of these are competitions between the New Democrats and the PCs. And if you would like Doug Ford, good for you. Vote for the guy. Vote for his candidate.
Does that mean that Tim's helping you?
Don't like him.
Deb, Tim is helping you. The Liberals are helping you here.
I don't think so, but I also don't think that the Liberals helped themselves with their strategy as of last Saturday to say, I'm out of here, Premier Kathleen Wynne, still vote Liberal.
Okay, lots to talk about, but we're going to wrap it up. We're going to come back to you. I don't mean to interrupt you, Tom, but I want to talk about this. This is the 42nd election in Ontario's history. Let's get a look now at how past votes have played out. Here's Eric Sorensen.
In the history of Ontario, there has been continuity, seldom disrupted. Conservatives and Liberals alternating as the parties in power 94% of the time. In the 151 years since Confederation, Liberals and Conservatives have governed for 142 years.
For a time, it looked like Ontario was becoming a one-party government. 75 years ago, George Drew led a brand new party, the Progressive Conservatives, to victory and won 3 terms. Then Leslie Frost won 3 more terms for the party. He was followed by John Robarts, who won twice for the PCs, and then Bill Davis won 4 times. 12 elections in a row won by the Progressive Conservatives, 42 years in power, and then disruption. It took 2 parties and 2 leaders to shake up Ontario.
In 1985, the Conservatives won the most seats on election night, but the Liberals, led by David Peterson, joined with New Democrat Bob Rae to bring down the PCs. Together, they had more seats and a far greater percentage of the popular vote, justifying the change. It was a tumultuous period. Peterson's Liberals winning a massive majority in the next election. Then Bob Rae shocked Ontario with the first and only NDP government in the province's history. In 1995, Ontario returned to its historic pattern of Conservatives and Liberals running 1-2. Mike Harris and the PCs, then Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne of the Liberals. Until 2018. Historic disruption once more. Doug Ford could win or blow a big lead. Andrea Horvath and the NDP, perennial third-place finishers, will fight tonight for first or second. And Kathleen Wynne's Liberals are bracing for an historic downfall for a party that has only finished third 4 times in 151 years. And could this be the worst Liberal showing of all?
Now, there's one person looking to make history in Ontario politics tonight, and he is the leader of the Green Party. I'm going to throw it over to Camille Kermali, who is in Guelph at his party headquarters, where the candidate has arrived.
That's right, Farah. So the viewing party here, the doors opened just about 15 minutes ago, and people have been starting to trickle in here. Now, the word everyone is using today, Green Party supporters are using today, is the word historic, because there's a good chance that Mike Schreiner could win this riding of Guelph and become the first Green Party MPP at Queen's Park. So Mike Schreiner joins me now here. And Mike, how are you feeling just hours before results come in?
Cautiously optimistic, but also very excited and inspired by the passionate, committed, and hardworking volunteers that are still out there trying to get people to the polls.
Now, traditionally, in the past decade at least, this has been a Liberal stronghold. What's so different this year that gives you believe, a better shot?
Well, I think people have seen me as somebody very active in the community, a champion for Guelph, and a strong voice for change at Queen's Park. And this has certainly been a change election, and I'm hoping that people in Guelph decide that green is the change they want.
And you told me earlier some dissatisfaction with the other parties.
Oh, absolutely. I'm hearing that dissatisfaction with the 3 status quo parties especially. You know, they spend more time tearing each other down than talking about how to build Ontario up. That's the kind of change I want to bring to Queen's Park. How can we work together for the people of Ontario?
Okay, and so Mike Schreiner here hoping to get the results, some results that will favor him in the next few hours or so. We'll keep updating you guys back there at the desk.
Okay, that sounds good. Camille Kermali, thank you for that. You know, the Greens weren't in the debate, but they've been running candidates in Ontario for decades. So this could be really big for the Green Party.
And they were upset. And I was at the debate, and they had a sizable contingent there with tape over their mouths and upset about this. But if Mr. Schreiner is able to do what the polls suggest that he can do tonight, which is breakthrough and win, it means that next time around, if we do go to the polls in another 4 years as a majority, that the consortium, and that's who decides who's in. The rules are you have to have candidates in every riding,
right?
And you have to have an elected MPP in the House.
Which there was an independent MPP in the House, but that was a different reason. That was
there's a Trillium. At dissolution, there was one member who was a Trillium Party member, but the reason that the Trillium Party wasn't in, is that was a person who crossed the floor, was not elected as a Trillium
So it's a
party.
very different
Jack
thing.
McLaren.
But now, if he does get this seat, I mean, you can assume he'll probably be in the debate next time
Schreiner,
around.
yeah.
Mr.
Well,
Schreiner, if he does get in.
We want to bring our panel back in here now. What do you think about the Green Party and whether or not a surge in votes for them, I mean, traditionally 5%, if it comes up higher, that could have a real impact in a lot of ridings? Deb.
I agree with you. I think it will. I think the votes generally will come from probably the New Democratic Party. Where it will matter to Conservatives is if we are in a three-way race.
Yep. Yeah, I see it the same way. I mean, anybody can go out and start their political party and vote for the party of their choice. But I would say that what it does de facto in many places would be to aid the election of a progressive conservative government. We're already experiencing this with the declining Liberal vote, draining or dividing the progressive vote, and so to further divide it makes it more difficult.
A hold your nose situation, Omar, where you're going to go and it's like, I don't like these two, and I can't vote Liberal. Hey, Green, I never picked one of those before.
I think it's unlikely. I think we may see Mr. Schreiner win in Guelph only because the Green Party, unlike the other three parties, can channel all of their resources, which are fairly significant. They get public funding, like the other three parties. They can channel all of those resources into one riding. We saw Elizabeth May federally elected in BC. We haven't really seen a green surge across the country after that.
Okay, panel, our wonderful audience, I want to show you something really cool now. We're going to go to our virtual studio where Eric Sorensen is going to show us this little map he made. He'll give us a little tour. Eric, over to you.
Farah, well, this map is going to look very different from what it looks like right now later in the evening because it will start to populate with colors. 124 different ridings will have results tonight. Just to give you a sense of what to expect, in Northern Ontario, the NDP is expected to do well, but in Southern Ontario, the Conservatives in most of those rural ridings are the ones that are expected to do pretty well against the competition. And as you can see, there are many more rural ridings in Southern Ontario than there are rural ridings in Northern Ontario, so advantage Conservatives. Now, looking at some of these regions more closely, down in southwestern Ontario, this is a very competitive area for the NDP in the big cities. Windsor, there are 2 ridings there, and there are 3 ridings in London, Ontario, the smaller ones that we see here. They are going to possibly win all 3 in London, but for the NDP to be competitive tonight, they needed to do well in some of those town and country ridings like Sarnia and down in Chatham. Now, moving over to South Central Ontario, again, the NDP has got to just about run the table on the smaller ridings, the urban ridings, that takes you from Brantford through Cambridge into Kitchener and into Waterloo. But in the bigger ridings, again, the Conservatives have the advantage in places like Halden and Norfolk that are right on Lake Erie. Swinging over to the Golden Horseshoe, this is where you get into some real battles between the NDP and the Conservatives. For example, in Niagara Falls and Niagara Centre, the NDP should do well there. They may take St. Catharines from Jim Bradley and the Liberals. That would be an historic change. But again, the bigger ridings swinging around Hamilton and up into Oakville, this is where the Conservatives start to make their impact in ridings where they have not done well recently, but they can start to do well tonight. Because if we go into the greater Toronto area, this is where we expect to see the race could be won. The Conservatives are expecting to try to win in Mississauga ridings. There are 5 of them down here. The NDP may do well in Brampton. There are 6 Mississauga, 5 Brampton. But as you get into Vaughan and Markham and Richmond Hill and Aurora and Newmarket, all of these are places where the Conservatives could be very, very competitive into Pickering and Uxbridge. And then when you come and look at Toronto itself more closely, the NDP may do well there against the Liberals, picking up Liberal seats. But if the Conservatives can start to pick up there as well, again, that's an advantage for them because if they're winning in the rural seats as well as around Toronto, and then they start winning the odd seat in Toronto, boy, their numbers start to pile up. One more region to look at, and that's around Ottawa. Again, the thing we're not talking about much are the Liberals. The Liberals have done well here in the past, as you can imagine, right down to Ottawa Centre. But tonight, in the surrounding areas, in Carleton, in Canada Carleton, the Conservatives are most likely to pick up those ridings. If there is a swing tonight, the NDP could be picking up the ones inside Ottawa. You look up here at maybe Ottawa-Vanier. That may be the one spot in this whole region where the Liberals maybe hold on to a seat, but that's the type of night it is for the Liberals, trying to hang on to the odd seat. For the NDP, they've got to run the table across the province because the Conservatives start with such an advantage with all of those rural ridings across southern Ontario. Back to you, Farah. Alan?
Okay. We're going to thank you so much for that, Eric. And we're going to find out in 35 minutes. We'll see the results start coming in. You have 35 minutes, by the way. If you're sitting at home right now debating whether to go out and vote, 35 minutes until the polls close.
Well, time now for some of our stations to break away with a look at the election closer to home.
All right, we are going to bring in Daryl Bricker. He's the CEO of Ipsos, and if you've watched our newscast, we've had a lot of data throughout this election in terms of where things are going. You and your team have been crunching the numbers. What I'm curious about is there's been a lot of people who said they couldn't decide, but today they had to decide. So when did they decide? Did they decide earlier, or did they decide when they got to the ballot box?
It was like a two-stage campaign for 43% of the people who voted today said that they decided even before the campaign had started, particularly if they voted for the Progressive Conservative Party, where 63% had already made up their minds. And then in the last week of the campaign, that's when most other people made up their minds. Interestingly enough, mostly Liberals. Today in the ballot box, about 9 or 10% of the people that we interviewed said that they made up their minds just as they went into the voting station.
You know, I heard a lot of that myself, just anecdotally from friends who said, like, seriously, it's going to be a game time decision for me as I walk in. And Daryl, with all of the calls for strategic voting over the last couple of days, what are people saying about why they voted the way they did?
Well, when we asked them today, about 60% said that they were doing it for positive reasons. They really liked the candidate that we were supporting. But when we asked people, who had the most negative views of voting the way that they did, in other words, they were voting to stop somebody else, it was really high for the NDP, higher than it was for the other parties. So I think today, if you saw strategic voting, you really saw it on the NDP side, trying to stop Doug Ford.
Did most people want to see a majority mandate, a minority government, want to go back to the polls in 18 to 24 months?
Ontarians were split on that, 50-50. You don't get many polling responses that are 50-50.
This time,
wow. 50
times,
quite the
split there.
50-50 this time. But interestingly enough, 76% of Conservative voters wanted a majority government. The people who are most insistent on a minority government listened to Kathleen Wynne. They voted for the Liberals.
All right, let's get to the money. Let's put some money where our mouths are,
exactly.
Okay? Because if you're a betting man or woman, when you ask people, you got $1,000, place $1,000, pick a winner.
Yeah, it's pretty clear, sort of the crowdsourcing approach to this kind of thing. Yeah. What do you think's really going to happen if you have to put your own money on the table? 53% of the population told us today is going to be Doug Ford, and it's going to be a majority.
53%. I mean, that's, Well, those aren't Vegas odds necessarily.
Well, it's similar to what we're seeing in the polls right now. That's basically what's being predicted in all the polls we saw over the space of the last week. But, voters can always surprise you. Mm-hmm. I've certainly been surprised on broadcasts like this before in terms of what Ontarians are going to do. And right now, I guess they're casting their ballots, and we'll know very soon.
Daryl, was there something in terms of demographics that really stood out to you that just was such an outlier in your data today?
How much the province is splitting between places like downtown and the suburbs and rural and smaller parts of Ontario. It's really becoming a province in which we're seeing a big division between those downtown, particularly university cities, and what the rest of the province thinks. And it's those downtown areas that are really fighting it out between the Liberals and the NDP, and then the suburbs and the more rural parts of the province of Ontario that have really gone blue, and I'm expecting we're going to see go blue tonight.
Okay, we appreciate your insight and glad you're with us tonight. Thanks so much, Daryl.
Thank you.
We want to bring in our colleagues from Global News Radio 640 Toronto. If you're listening to us on the radio, welcome. Tasha Carradine is at Doug Ford's headquarters. Now, Tasha, you've been talking to listeners throughout this campaign. What's been their thoughts about a possible PC government?
Well, generally, listeners are tired of the current Wynne government. That was a very clear message. When it comes to the PC alternative, many of them don't seem to care, for example, that the PCs don't have a costed platform. It's really about a trust to clean up the mess. There's listeners who have said to me, Doug Ford is the guy because he has experience in business, he's experienced at City Hall in Toronto, we trust him to do this. On the other hand, there are some people who have really had a virulent reaction against Doug Ford who say, no, I want to vote PC, but not for him. So it's kind of a mix of the two, but more of our listeners, I would say, were leaning Ford's way than not.
Okay, Tasha, thank you so much for that. We have Alex Pearson also from 640, host of On Point. She's at Andrea Horvath's headquarters. Alex, how do you think the NDP's handled this campaign?
I think they've done a relatively good job. I mean, this was a first real big test for Andrea Horvath because, you know, she kind of had no competition from the Liberals that were pretty much dead on arrival. And so she had a relatively good campaign. The big issue for her was dealing with all these candidates that kept coming up with either, anti-mining or Hitler memes or all these anti-poppy. So she had to really balance her campaign with what is she going to do in supporting her candidates versus, dealing with the media constantly asking about them and knocking her off message. And she chose from very early on, Farah, to stand by her candidates, which I think in some senses hurt her because people were like, it brought this attention to her candidates that I don't think that they were expecting. It also raised questions about experience. Do they have experience on the bench? Will these people be able to do the job? And they also became much more highly scrutinized. And it wasn't until that scrutiny came in that I think about a week and a half ago that we started to see the Orange Crush kind of slow down as more people started to look at the who in fact would be able to do the job. And that, of course, is at the time of the campaign when Doug Ford brought out his bench strength to say, hey, you might not like me, but at least look at my people that I can, put on the ground and they can instantly run. So did she run a good campaign? I think she did, in fact, run a very good campaign. She did go relatively unchallenged. However, it's a win-win for her either way tonight, because if she becomes the opposition, they're in very, very good standing.
With many, many, many more seats. Okay, thanks, Alex.
You're watching Decision Ontario. The time is 8:31.
.640's Matt Gurney. He's the host of Exchange, and he's spending the evening at Kathleen Wynne's headquarters. Matt, what's your take about how tonight's going to play out for the Liberal Party?
Well, I think honestly by this point, I think we have a pretty good sense that even the Liberals themselves have recognized how it will turn out. As someone was joking to me earlier, we're waiting tonight for the second concession, the first one coming 5 days ago. And I guess we'll just have to see whether or not they've been able to hold on to even official party status, which is like the third goal they've set for themselves over the course of this campaign. At first, the Liberals might have told you, hey, look, voters, they're not going to like the PCs. They're not going to like the New Democrats. They're going to come back to us. And then they pivoted from that. They started to talk about, you know what? No, what we're going to focus on is sending enough Liberal MPPs back to Queen's Park to hold the balance of power. And from there, we've revised that even just to a full holding official party status for the Liberals. So I think there's no real expectation of good news tonight. There is some hope that maybe bad news can be avoided, but even the definition of bad news is something that has changed a lot over the course of the last 4 weeks.
Matt, everyone at this desk knows that you're a big Star Trek fan. We were wondering if you could put it in a Trekkie reference for us. Maybe tonight, what's going to happen?
A pretty obscure one. Yeah, here's the problem. I'm not even, someone took this away from me on Twitter already, so I can't even use it originally, but it's going to be the Battle of Wolf 359. Alan, I think, knows what I'm talking about here. Also, I want to say the real speculation here tonight actually has nothing to do with the politics. The real buzz is how many times Alan's going to take his glasses on and off over the course of the broadcast. That's what we're excited about tonight. That's what we're all waiting to hear
over
for.
Under, we have bets on that, so all right, thank you.
Okay, well,
there we go.
Let's talk about some of the pivotal moments in this campaign and talk about when things began to shift and change. And we've heard a couple of things raised, but these are the 2 points that I think things completely changed. And one of them was on May the 28th, as I have to put my glasses back on to see that, May the 28th, when suddenly the PCs shifted in their campaign strategy. Prior to that, it had been Doug Ford is the Progressive Conservative Party, and the Progressive Conservative Party is Doug Ford. Then this happened. It's kind of like a Last Supper sort of a deal here, with Ford in the middle, flanked by all the heavy hitters in his party that he says he's going to bring to government. There's Vic Fedeli, Caroline Mulrooney, and no mistake, right on the other side, Christine Elliott, the leader that a lot of people, a lot of conservatives wished the party had picked. It would have been a lot easier for them to be able to get into government. At this point, as soon as Ford does this, his sliding and the slipping of votes stops, and he stops the bleeding. Now, the other, of course, key moment in all of this comes a little later in the campaign. This, of course, we've talked a lot about it. On Saturday, a surprise by Kathleen Wynne. She gets emotional, standing in front of these kids playing in the playground, saying, I'm not going to be the premier. We really haven't ever seen anything like this. The only other time we can think of this in recent Canadian history, Ujjal Dosanjh did it in British Columbia in 2003. The same sort of thing. His party ended up with only 2 seats in that election. We're going to have to see whether or not that is the fate of the Liberals tonight.
All right, we have our insider panel here with us, and I want to talk about equality when it comes to candidates, male and female candidates. We know that the Green Party and the NDP have more women than men running. We also know the Liberals are almost equal. The PCs have a third. Something really cool, I don't know if we have these boards yet. I want to show you something. There are 3 ridings in the province, Cambridge being one of them, where all 4 of the candidates are women. Let's take a look at the next board here. And this is the same situation in Kitchener Centre, where we have all 4 of the candidates being women, and in one more riding as well, where 2 city councillors are running against 2 women from the pharmaceutical industry, Glanbrook, excuse me. So I want to turn it over to you, Deb. Given the parties, it's more popular with men than with women, historically has. I mean, why not make that effort to put more female candidates out there?
Well, I think we have made an effort, without a doubt. But our party has never believed, and I certainly support this, in the notion of setting quotas. And I know the Liberals tend to favor that. When you look at the federal Liberal Party, Prime Minister Trudeau felt that it was important to say 50% of my cabinet are women. I just fundamentally disagree with the notion of setting quotas. And there's tons more we can do to encourage more women. You're seeing it, without a doubt. But I think putting an artificial quota on that isn't really the way to go.
Tom, did your party have a quota?
No,
I mean, you have more female candidates than anybody else.
More women than men. 56% women. But there's no quotas. Members come together and they choose. It's just reflective of the members. Unlike the other parties, there's no ability in the NDP constitution to appoint a candidate unless it's after the writ and emergency at the end. I believe there's an exception. But in normal circumstances, no. So what has to happen in the New Democrats is that there has to be a process of search that looks at different people and makes sure that there are a number of people that are interested in the nomination. And then it's up to the members to make a decision. And this is the way it's turned out. So good for them.
Omar, why is it important to have an equal cabinet?
Well, because you want to have representative government, right? I think, and it has to be representative. It has to have gender balance. I think it also has to have regional balance, but also multicultural balance. We have a lot of communities, ethnic communities living in Ontario. They need to be represented at the table. One of the things, in the Liberal Party, we don't have specific quotas either. But one of the things that we do have is something called the Margaret Campbell Fund, named after a former cabinet minister, Ontario Liberal cabinet minister. And the Premier and Deb Matthews, the campaign co-chair, and others actively campaign to support this organization, to raise money and support female candidates looking to run for office within our party.
Okay, thanks so much for that. Thank you all for your response to that question. I want to go to David Aiken now. And David, you're going to be showing us something new with these election poll-by-poll results.
Yeah, so political geeks, come on over. We've got a new tool to look at ridings and try to understand how the election is going. And remember, in this election, we got 124 new ridings, most of which are brand new. The electoral map's been completely redrawn. How might that affect things? I want to show you a riding up in the Ottawa area. It's Canada Carleton. It's right here. This is the map right here, poll-by-poll results from 2014. Just to orient you, here's Ottawa proper, Canada Carleton. Now you might think, oh, it's blue, and yes, it's got a history going conservative. But let's zoom in a little bit here. And look at this. These are small polls in the urban area part of this riding. They're mostly Liberal. As this riding urbanizes into rural Ontario, and this is like a lot of big cities are growing into urban areas, they become more progressive. Canada Carleton could happen tonight. We're going to track that, and when we get some live results in, of course after 9 o'clock, we're going to populate this and see if the red band here in the urban area of Canada Carleton can expand. There's one other wrinkle, and let's bring up the big picture for Canada Carleton tonight. Mary Lee Fullerton is the progressive conservative nominee here. Jack McLaren is the incumbent, but he was a PC MPP, got kicked out because he had a Me Too problem, and he's running as an independent. He might pull away enough votes that should go to Mary Lee Fullerton to perhaps let the Liberal Stephanie Magnum come up the middle in this new urbanizing kind of riding, Canada Carleton. My friend John Hanson running again. He's a perennial runner for New Democrats, likely not to be a factor in Canada Carleton. This is really a race for the Conservatives to lose. Alan, Farah.
Okay, thank you. Now, you know how tight this race has been if you've been paying attention to it. And Eric is going to show us another tool that we're going to use to explain this horse race to you, and that is our majority meter over here. By the way, 20 minutes until polls close. Over to you, Eric.
Yep, and as soon as the polls close, we're going to expect that they're in the starting blocks right now, and then the race begins to get to 63 seats in a majority, so that the PCs, the Liberals, the NDP will be racing to get to 63 seats and to break through. That is a majority when there are 124 seats. Now, what the two parties that are not winning are going to want to do is to stop the leading party from getting to 63. If they can pull it back from 63, that means the other two parties will have more than 63. Unless, of course, you end up with 62, and then you could have a tie, and you don't even want to think about that. But the idea is one party wants to get to 63 seats, then it's an easy call. It's a majority government. But if it's something short of 63, who's going to talk to whom about what would be a hung parliament, and who's going to then be able to command the confidence of the House to get that majority with more than one party? Back to you, Farah. Alan?
Is that the plan?
All right. Thanks very much, Eric. And we want to talk now with David Aiken a little bit more about the NDP and
the path to power.
And, you know, as we look at how they could possibly achieve government, there are some key places where, like you're saying, you're going to have to win where you've never won before.
Right. So Darrell explained this idea of efficiency of vote. The NDP support right now is concentrated in a few regions of the province. PC support is more spread out. The NDP are going to do very well tonight, I think, in southwestern Ontario. Take Highway 6, draw a line from Owen Sound down to Niagara Falls, and that is what we'll call the Rust Belt. A lot of manufacturing job losses. The NDP are doing very well there, concerned about that. It's places in eastern Ontario, rural eastern Ontario, they break through there. We're going to see something. If we see a New Democrat win in Mississauga tonight, hold on, because that's the breakthrough. Same thing if we see NDP do something in Scarborough. And if they sweep the 5 Bramptons, Tom Parkin's going to be doing somersaults around the floor here.
And in just a couple of moments, we're going to go to the NDP headquarters and talk to their chief of staff, Michael Balagas. He's the guy that told me early on, he said, this is a change election. Yep. This is going to be a change election. The Liberals are not going to be in it. I think just for the NDP and for many other people, the electorate came to that conclusion a lot sooner than everyone expected.
The NDP is going to do very well tonight. There's no question about that. And yet they may still be disappointed because this seemed to be the stars were perfectly aligned for them to seize power. A polarizing candidate on the PC side, a very unpopular Liberal premier. And here was Andrea Horvath, who had some success last time around. And can she take it to the finish line? She may fall a bit short tonight.
She may, and the person who might make it to the finish line, of course, Doug Ford. Jamie Morocker is there speaking to his communications advisor. Jamie, I'll throw it over to you.
Thanks so much, Farah. You heard it right there. A little bit of a polarizing character in this race. Doug Ford, of course. I'm here with his head of the war room, as they say, Melissa Lantzman. She has been with him since the beginning of this campaign. So, Melissa, communication strategy played a big role in this campaign. We have seen Doug Ford in the past be quite brash, quite forward, and we saw a bit of a toned down Doug this time around. How much of a role did that play for you guys?
Look, I think you saw a Doug that is ready to be premier. And I think that we had to introduce Doug to Ontario. Well, while he's well known in Ford Nation right here in Etobicoke, and while he's well known in Toronto, I think we had the opportunity and the task of introducing him to the rest of the province. And we took that very seriously. And here we are.
So let's talk about this a little bit, and this might be a little bit of inside baseball, but for those who don't know, media was pretty locked down. We got about 5 questions every time there was a media availability. There was not a lot of straightforward answers, we'll say. Was that part of the plan to keep to message?
I don't know if there is a plan to ever keep to message, but Doug Ford is available every single day, doing press conferences, scrums. Sometimes they look organized and they are behind flags, and then sometimes they were outside of a bus. But he was well accessible to the public, and I think the important thing is that we get our message out. That Doug gets to talk to Ontarians about lowering their hydro rates, about lowering the price of gas, about a middle income tax cut of 20%, and that's exactly what we did.
There was a few wrenches thrown in your plan, per se, a few scandals here and there. We had the 407, the Green Belt, then we had a little bit of Ford family drama with that $16.5 million lawsuit. how did you guys push forward as a department and make sure that you guys made it through to this day?
Our job is to our job is really to tell the story of Ontarians really want change, and we gave them that story. We gave them a plan that they can get behind, and hopefully they choose us tonight. But look, we're not the only ones with scandal. We have a radical NDP with a slate of candidates that are questionable. We don't even know which ones they're going to put as ministers, if any at all. And she here said, Andrea Horvath herself said that they need training school. This is a team that is ready to govern from day one. And look, when it comes to the Liberals, even Kathleen Wynne doesn't want Kathleen Wynne to be premier. So I don't know what you say about that.
All right, thanks so much, Melissa. We appreciate you being here with us tonight. Of course, here at the PC headquarters, they are hoping for a majority government. There are some polls that say they are slated to win a majority tonight. And of course, Ford Nation behind me here, they're excited. They're happy to be here. They're just waiting for Doug Ford to arrive. And that could happen in the next half hour?
I think so.
We could be seeing him here in the next half hour. You can hear they're chanting Ford behind me, so I'll send it back into you guys.
Okay, Jamie, thanks so much for that. Less than 15 minutes till the polls close, but Melissa, you just heard that's who was talking to Jamie there. She's doing her job, communications director. She's getting her talking points out. One of them was that Ford is available. He was available, and you were on the campaign trail. You were at those press conferences. What was that like? Was he available answering questions?
Mr. Ford actually said recently that he's been available more than anybody on this campaign, and that is simply not true.
Okay.
It is simply not true. Mr. Ford takes a limited number of questions at his one availability per day. And the way that the Conservatives handle that is that they stack the back of the room with their own volunteers and their own staff. And when they get to a point where they think that's probably enough, whether Mr. Ford is in trouble or whether they just figure that's it, they just all... And he just leaves.
Okay.
And that's the way they handled it all the way along. A front runner status, keep them, on message, and not too many questions.
And let's break that provincial conservative curse, just not saying anything at the last minute that could jeopardize anything. Now, one person who did, and you told me this, that stood there and answered questions was Andrea Horvath. Question. She stood there, she answered the questions, but is it going to be enough to get her that second floor office at Queen's Park? We're going to go to Mark Carcasole. He's standing by with the NDP's chief of staff.
Farah, that is the hope, the optimism here is that, as Alan mentioned a little earlier, the belief that this is a change election. And the man who said that to Alan at the beginning of this campaign is this man right here, Michael Balagas, the campaign director for Andrea Horvath. Michael, there's been a lot made over the way Andrea went about this campaign. Light on the mudslinging, heavy on the issues, keeping it light and making sure to draw a clear distinction between her and her opponents. Is this the campaign you wanted? Did this go the way you wanted?
No, it absolutely is the campaign we wanted, and I think the evidence of that is the way Andrea connected with voters. And here we are on election day. We're the only party whose vote has grown since this campaign began. She's the only leader whose vote has grown since this campaign began. And we're exactly where we hoped we'd be. And I'm very proud of her, very proud of our campaign.
Someone watching from the outside might say that things really changed for you guys and really ramped up this past weekend when Kathleen Wynne essentially conceded defeat. Do you feel the same way? Did things change, and what changed if that's the case?
Yeah, no, they absolutely did change. And I mean, the biggest change was Andrea is now the only person who can stop Doug Ford from the Premier's office. And that's significant. We know a vast majority of Ontarians do not want him to be Premier. And with Kathleen Wynne stepping out of the way, that really opened the door and made it clear who that person is. And I have said over and over again that we're not going to see the full measure of that decision until tonight, when people get in that ballot box and make their mark. And quite frankly, are there going to be more people turning out tonight who are enthusiastic about a Doug Ford premiership, or are there going to be more people turning out tonight committed to stopping a Doug Ford premiership?
Andrea and her team certainly put on the full court press over the last 3 days, 1,200 kilometers on the road, but a lot of that was focused in the 519, and we know that a large contingent of PC support is in the 905. Was that a mistake? Should they have focused more on the 905 in those last few days?
No, we're doing very well in the 905. We were in the 905. Certainly our field campaign, we shifted a lot of field resources into the 905. And we're pretty optimistic that we're going to do, we're certainly going to do better than we ever have there. And we think that might be the spot where we grind the Conservatives to a halt.
Thank you very much, Michael. Michael Balagas, the campaign director for Andrea Horvath. There you have it. That O word again, optimistic. We will see what happens tonight. We will find out shortly, but there is a lot of positivity here in the room today as people start filing in to see Andrea Horvath. Back to you guys on the desk.
Hope, for sure. Thank you. Sabrina Devetti, co-host of the morning show on Global News Radio 640 Toronto, joins us now. And Sapriya, we were just talking about this.
Yeah.
You and I, we're old millennials. I might not even really be considered one, but anyway, let's talk about the youth vote.
Yeah.
Right?
So let's talk about it. And I think Daryl sort of touched on this a little bit when talking about giving some people something to vote for rather than to vote against. And we're seeing right now there's a lot of getting out there to vote against Doug Ford from the NDP side of thing, which doesn't historically generally bring out a large youth contingent. Generally, when we have seen a youth quake, if you will allow me to use that made-up term, often it's because the youth are given something to vote for. We saw that with Barack Obama, for example. His presidential run. We saw that as well.
Nancy Calgary.
Had Nancy in Calgary, yes, absolutely. Justin Trudeau here, yeah. Whereas right now, everyone who is, well, not everyone, but a good contingent of the NDP electorate that is getting out there is simply voting to stop Doug. And I don't know if that's enough to convince millennials and Generation Z to really get up off the couch.
I think it's sometimes, sometimes we do a disservice to young people by just assuming that they're going to be on the progressive front. I mean, you look at a guy like Sam Oosterhoff in the Niagara region. He's a staunch progressive conservative. He'll likely win again. Yeah. And even in that riding, all three of the candidates are very young. I think all of them are in their 20s. So I think maybe sometimes when we look at that group, we have to be careful not to say, well, they're all going to vote one way.
Sure, I think that's a good point. But, Sam Oosterhoff, all the credit to him, he's not exactly a representative sample of his age demographic as it is. And I think if you're looking at actual numbers of things...
Is it just because he lived in his parents' basement before?
Well,
no, I think there's a lot to live in their parents' basement.
But
maybe his...
Let's don't bring down living in the basement. Omar over here still living in mom's basement, so...
Yeah, but,
It's very prominent in the South Asian community.
Exactly. I will give Omar that. Yes, we shall.
I'm 40 and my parents would still love it if I moved back. And they're watching now, and they can attest to that.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think there are different demos, of course, but I think the NDP were really hoping, or are really hoping, the polls haven't closed yet, 8 minutes left, 8 minutes and 45 seconds, that...
Right, so we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, right? There is still a very, there's a chance that the youth will come out, and there's a chance that the youth will come out and then also, propel the NDP to victory. However, if past is precedent, it just becomes a little bit more difficult.
All right, thanks very much, Supriya. I'm just checking my Twitter right here, and Doug Ford has just tweeted a photo of himself sitting on the couch in his mom's basement.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
The results come in, and we're...
How's this for a segue? Erica Vella, right there. She is outside. She's outside the Ford family home in Etobicoke, and this is kind of a tradition for them, right, Erica?
That's right, Farah. Right now, they're inside. They're snacking on some jerk chicken appetizers, some Bombay lamb appetizers. And look at the driveway right now. It is packed with cars. The whole family is here. Ford's wife, Carla, his 4 daughters, his mother, Diane, his sister, Kathy, and brother, Randy. We also just saw Rob Ford's 2 children walk in. So Doug's nephew and niece as well. So there's been a lot of action happening at this house today, getting ready for the big night. I should say it's really not a coincidence that the Fords are starting their night here at his mother's house. I mean, it's in Etobicoke, it's the heart of Ford Nation, but it's also the place where this whole journey really started. If we look back to this past January, it was the home that Ford announced his bid for the PC leadership race. He went on to win that race, and now we're here, election night. But we won't be here all night. In fact, he's planning on heading to headquarters sometime soon, and we will be sure to follow him there, and that's where we'll continue our coverage. I'll send it back to you.
Okay, Erica Vella reporting. Thanks for that. We're going to go...
Just before we do that,
yeah, sure.
I just want to mention from Erica's coverage,
yeah.
we actually have a vehicle with a camera mounted on it. And when Mr. Ford leaves his mom's home and drives over to the Congress Center, we're going to follow him live.
We're with you. Yep.
And I don't know who's driving that car, but it's going to be like, think of the OJ chase. The slow.
But on the ground. On the
very slow.
ground.
Not in a felon chasing a felon kind of way. Let me just be clear about that. All right.
That's what we want to know.
Okay, I'm going to cut this off right now because I want to go to our Karen Lieberman. She is at a race that a lot of people are watching in Brampton. Guratan Singh is running. He is, of course, Jagmeet Singh's brother. A lot of controversy surrounding this one, though.
Yeah, there was indeed, Farah. Guratan Singh, he had this sign, this protest sign that came up during the campaign. Not the most flattering. It was him holding an anti-police sign. However, Andrea Horvath stood by him, and hey, he's got something that no other candidate in this race has, and you mentioned it, it's his big brother, Jagmeet Singh, who's been right by his side as well, campaigning for him. In fact, this riding, Brampton East, is made up of 2 former ridings, and one of them was held by big brother Jagmeet. So he's well known here, and Guratan Singh now has his star power as well, following in Big Brother's footsteps. Now, the Liberal candidate who's running in Brampton East also has a well-known name here. He's a doctor, and healthcare is big in Brampton. Brampton has, of course, Brampton Civic Hospital, which is the busiest emergency room across Canada. So healthcare top of mind. Not only is Parminder Singh a doctor, though, he also brought Hockey Night in Canada in Punjabi. So a lot of fans for him. However, Brampton East is one of 5 ridings in the Brampton area. The other 4 all went Liberal last time. So those, arguably, 4 ridings up for grabs for either the NDP or the PCs. And it's important, finally, to note here tonight that in the last 6 straight elections, the winning party took most seats, the highest number of seats in these suburban areas. Enter the 905. That's why this is a key battleground tonight. And let me leave you with one thought, Farah and Alan. Guess what drink they're serving here tonight? Orange Crush, of course.
Orange Crush. See, I thought it was going to be mango lassi because that's also orange, and that would work better, but that's okay.
That's a little more on point,
I would think. And delicious.
All right, time now for some of our stations to break away with results closer to home. We are less than 4 minutes away now from the polls closing, so people who are in line maybe get a chance to vote right now, but if you're not out there, it's about to close up shop, and that means we're going to get results very soon. Our Global News election analyst, Barry Kay, is going to be pouring over all of these results once they start pouring in. And Barry, in terms of what you're expecting to see tonight, how bad is this going to be for the Liberal Party?
Oh, the Liberals don't have a safe seat in the province. We have a projection through Laurier, the listpop.ca, which had them down to 4, but there have been other projections showing they might be as low as 1 or 2. There are a couple of seats in the Toronto area where they're in a little better shape. The Vaughan riding, the riding of St. Paul's, perhaps University Rosedale, perhaps some of the Don Valley East, but they're not going to win all those. Also, one riding in the Ottawa area. Ottawa-Vanier is the one seat outside of the Toronto area where I think they have a reasonable chance to win. But my guess is they're going to be short of the 8 seats required for the official party status, and they may be closer to 0 at the end of the evening.
Barry, there's a lot of talk about the volatility in the electorate over the course of this campaign. Was that reflected in the numbers that you saw, or had people actually made up their mind earlier than perhaps the prognosticators have been thinking?
Some had made up their mind early, but this is a campaign not just that the Liberals did terribly in, and that goes without saying, but in fact, a month ago, or at least at the end of April, the Conservative Party was at 43%. The most recent polls show they're now at about 37 or 38%. This has not been a strong campaign for Doug Ford. Fortunately for him, there was more antipathy toward Kathleen Wynne and the Liberals. But this isn't a campaign, at least, that the Conservatives can take great pride in. And frankly, it's the fourth. They're quite possibly going to win the election. They're quite possibly going to get a majority. But this is the 4th campaign in a row. 07 with Tory, and then 11 and 14 with Hudak, where in fact the party has lost support during the campaign. And that's part of the reason why the NDP has done so well. Many people are turned off of Conservatives as well as the Liberals.
All right, Barry Kay from Wilfrid Laurier, thank you so much for your analysis. We'll get back to you once we start seeing those results pour in.
This seems to be an election where a lot of people aren't happy. A lot of people are saying they're holding their nose and voting. There seems to be that consensus, at least. What does this say about your leaders, and what does this say about politics in general? Deb.
Well, I still believe that this campaign has been all about change. And it's been change from the Liberals, which wasn't just about Kathleen, but also about what she and Dalton McGuinty before her had done in the province. And so people were looking for change. I don't think voting for someone who brings true change, which I think Mr. Ford does, I don't think anyone argues that that's not the case, is a negative vote whatsoever. I actually see that as voting for something, and I think that is the case in the votes that are going tonight to the Progressive Conservatives.
Tom, I asked Andrea this very question in the day before the vote. I said, you know, what does that say about politics? What does it say about you that we have so many people in this province say, I don't like any of these people?
That is always a part of politics, but to win, you have to have the two parts. You need to have, and this is why I said the most important thing Andrea Horvath did for herself was decide to have a detailed and costed platform that she could show to everybody.
With a $1.4 billion problem mistake in it.
It was still an important plan and the only one that stood up to scrutiny at the end of the day. So the important thing here was that it inspired her own folks and it showed a path and a will to become a government. That's the inspiring side. Now, there's a lot of people who are not very inspired or inspired in a bad way, I guess, by Mr. Ford. And they're trying to find a way to avoid that outcome. But it's a mix of the two emotions, a mix of the hope and optimism, but also there's fear in there.
All right, thanks very much, guys. It is 9 o'clock. You are watching Decision Ontario. You are watching Decision Ontario. We're coming to you live tonight from downtown Toronto at our Global News studios at Chorus Key. Well, in most ridings, the polls have now closed and the counting has begun. Over the next 10 minutes or so, we should begin to see the results of your vote.
And whether you're watching us live on television, maybe you're streaming us online at globalnews.ca, or maybe you're listening to us over Global News Radio, we are your #1 source for tonight's election. Welcome.
Well, now, for those of you watching us, at the bottom of the screen there, you can follow along on the overall race with the leading and elected count. And we are expecting results to come in very quickly tonight. We have some delays in a couple of ridings that will delay the overall results. But we are expecting with electronic voting that these results will come in quickly. Now, below there, you're going to see the individual riding races. The very latest numbers for all 124 seats up for grabs tonight. We're going to cycle through those alphabetically, and for our radio friends, don't worry, we'll keep you updated as well.
Some big things are in play for this election. For how much things could change, let's check in with Eric Sorensen.
Every election writes a new chapter in a province's political history, and tonight will be no different. The makeup of the Ontario legislature will change, and so will many of the people who govern this province. The majority of members elected to the 41st Parliament in 2014 were Liberals. How different will it be in 2018 for the Progressive Conservatives and the New Democrats? And there will be 17 more MPPs. Here is the outcome from 2014. The NDP in orange was dominant in the north. Progressive Conservatives in blue swept most of small-town, southern, central, and eastern Ontario. The Liberals in red dominated most urban centres, most decisively in the Greater Toronto area, where they secured their majority. Tonight, we start all over again with a clean slate and with new ridings. To give Northern Ontario a greater voice, a change to this: Kiiwetinoong and Mushkegowuk, James Bay, 2 new ridings in the north. In the south, 15 more ridings. For example, Brampton and Mississauga had 8 ridings in the last election. Now together they have 11, with huge population growth around Toronto. Tonight, Ontario's legislature will change from 107 to 124 MPPs, making the threshold for a governing majority 63 seats.
Now, while we wait for the results, I know it's a tense wait for everyone involved. Jamie Morocker, she's standing by at PC headquarters. There she is, Mark Carcasole in the middle there with the NDP, and Shalima Maharaj is with the Liberals at the Liberals headquarters. Jamie, we're going to start with you, and you're joined by someone who's been with the Ford family for a long time, the Chief of Staff of Doug Ford's late brother, Rob Ford.
That's absolutely right. A very long time. He's seen the Fords through their mayoral race and through the leadership race, and now for this, heading for premier in the last few minutes. Those polls are going to start coming in very quickly. I'm with Amin Massoudi. He's the Deputy Chief of Staff for the leader. Thank you for being with us.
Pleasure.
So, like I said, you've known the Fords for a very long time. We have talked already about how we saw a very different Ford this campaign than we did during the mayoral campaign. Can you tell me a little bit, though, about some of the catchphrases that came up? Radical NDP, friends, folks, the way he talked, you were actually responsible for some of that.
Yeah, you know what? I think you're seeing a Doug Ford that's very focused, and his message has been pretty clear. I think we've been trying our best to keep very consistent on the message and just put out a plan that we think reflects the priorities that people in Ontario want to see. In terms of some of the catchphrases, I work on the speeches, and I say, my job is to put it in his words, and a big part of that is just reflecting who he is, and that's just how he talks. He's a real guy, and that's what we're trying to bring through and convey in the speeches that he's delivering, and I think that comes through for the most part.
So a man for the people is what he's presenting, but how do you sell somebody like Doug Ford to the white-collar conservative?
You know what? I think Doug's message appeals across a lot of lines. Party lines, geographic lines. People from all different walks of life are flocking to Doug right now. We're seeing an incredible GOTV effort, hundreds of people on the ground, volunteers coming out from all walks of life, and I think that reflects a message that people are really resonating with, and it speaks to the priorities that Doug has campaigned on, and I think it's something that a lot of people in this province are feeling the pressure that they're under financially. They want relief from the high tax burden in this province, and Doug's the guy that's going to deliver that for them. So hopefully we're going to have a victory tonight. That's what we're feeling.
All right, thank you so much, Amin. Hoping for a majority government here in Ford Nation. You can hear how excited they are behind me. I'll send it back into you guys.
Okay, Jamie, thanks so much. We have some results to show you. Look at the bottom of your screen. We've been telling you, take a look. The NDP, 6 seats.
Yeah, the PCs with 5, the Liberals with 2. This is just obviously leading at this point. This is just early information. We can get you some new results now coming out of Simcoe Grey. Here's a look where Jim Wilson, who is the former interim leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, this should be a very safe blue seat. And as you can see, with only 3% of the polls reporting, Mr. Wilson is going to be probably very likely making a return trip to Queen's Park.
He's gone through this quite a few times.
He has,
right,
indeed.
Right. He's experienced at this. Mark Carcassole is at Andrea Horvath's headquarters. Mark, I just want to point out, I don't know if you've seen, but we are projecting 6 seats for the NDP leading elected. I know it's still very early.
I'm seeing that now, and so is everyone here, Farah. Just less than 30 seconds ago, you heard a little bit of that, what you just heard here. As the numbers continue to climb, people seeing that the NDP are in the lead right now with 6 seats thus far. A real sense of optimism here, and they're starting to let in the normal people now, if you will, the voters, the NDP supporters, not the political operatives or the staff, but the actual people who voted, people like Patty. I want to bring in Patty, a Hamilton resident. Patty, we were speaking a little earlier, lifelong NDP supporter, but you say that this election took on an added importance for you. You stepped in and you really fought for the party this time around.
Absolutely. I've done as much as I can to support Andrea and support the whole campaign, because we're really in it to win it this time.
What was it about this one that made you decide to volunteer and really, hit the ground and get out there for them?
I always do volunteer when I can, but this time Doug Ford cannot be our premier. He cannot.
Are you confident that she can do that? We're hearing that, she could be a strong second place. Still not a lot of people convinced she can be premier, though.
I think it's her time. She could be a strong second place, but I think she could be even stronger as a first place. She'd be an amazing premier.
We hear everyone cheering back here, and I want to direct your attention to the monitor below us here. You're seeing these numbers, 11 PC, 10 NDP, 4 Liberal. How do you feel looking at these numbers? Still very early, but how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel great. We know that all along it's been a really tight race. We've been neck and neck the whole time, and so to see that we still are tells me that we have a really good shot at this.
All right, Patty, thank you so much. Thank you for talking to us. Appreciate your time. Guys, you can see it, the numbers bouncing back and forth, and a lot of support, a lot of optimism here at NDP headquarters. We will see how things go as time goes on. Back to you.
Mark, thanks so much. I just want to point out that Mark was looking, and things just changed right when he was talking. The PC is now at 24, the NDP at 16. The Liberals have 5 seats, 3 away now from official party stats, which is, of course, what they want tonight. They want more than that. But we want to talk about the bigger picture. We're going to go to Eric Sorensen with that map in our virtual studio with more. Eric, how does it look?
Farah, you're already beginning to see things take shape. As we were saying, the NDP would expect to do well in the north right now. Thunder Bay, Atikokan there in front, Temiskaming, Cochrane as well. Let's come on down to Southern Ontario. This is where we had said the Conservatives are likely to do better in rural Southern Ontario. And look at that, all of these big ridings. There's Parry Sound, Muskoka. You've got Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston, and then all the way down to Chatham. This is an interesting thing down in the southwestern Ontario because this is where you would expect the NDP to be very competitive if they're going to try to defeat the Conservatives tonight. But look at that, Sarnia-Lambton, the Lambton County, as well as Chatham-Leamington, all kind of going towards the Conservatives right now. But let's also look into Toronto because you can see those tiny ridings. Look at that. There are some of those Liberal ridings that, I mean, it's very early to say, but there are at least 4 Liberal ridings in the Toronto area and the GTA. Vaughan Woodbridge is the one just on top of Toronto there. This is Don Valley North. That is a brand new riding. I think we have the board for that one. Let's have a look and see what that says to us. Don Valley North, Shelley Carroll is leading there. This is the new riding. None of these, of course, are brand new because people have been voting there for years, but they've created a new riding, so there are now 3 Don Valley ridings. Shelley Carroll with a 3 percentage point lead. Look at how few votes there are. Only 2% of the polls reporting, so her lead is only about 40 votes. So you can't read too much into that right now, but if you're the Liberals and you were worried about getting shut out, it's nice to see a little bit of red on that map. Farah, Alan?
Hi, thanks so much for that, Eric Sorensen. Now you can see the Greens with 1. Again, these are leading and elected. So we're going to get a closer look at that in terms of how many have actually been elected. So these are, again, very early numbers. But let's go to David Aiken right now. He's looking at London results. David, why is London significant?
Well, because we've got some radio listeners down there in London on Global News AM 980. We'd like to say, 580, pardon me. We'd like to say hello to those folks and give you what's up to speed in London. London's an important part of this province. Some seats could flip here. Elgin Middlesex, London. First of all, the incumbent there, Jeff Urick, is leading. He's got 51% of the votes, but very early, just 3% of polls reporting. Amanda Stratton of the NDP is in second. Elgin Middlesex, London, turning out as it should. Same thing in Lambton, Kent, Middlesex. Monty McNaughton, the Progressive Conservative, former leadership candidate, leading right now with 5% of the polls reporting, and he's got almost half the vote. NDP Todd Case is in second place in Lambton, Kent, Middlesex. London Fanshawe, NDP incumbent here, and Teresa Armstrong, as we have no polls reporting. This is one of the few no polls reporting. Teresa Armstrong, the incumbent, she's waiting to see what happens tonight. 0 polls right now in London Fanshawe. London North Centre, this is the riding up for grabs. Deb Matthews' old stomping ground. Terry Kernaghan is leading, 45% with 11% of the polls in. That's a significant chunk, and he's up by a fair amount on Susan Troupe, the former Conservative MP. So NDP over the PCs. And in London West, Peggy Sattler is elected with 57%. Peggy Sattler elected with 57%, beating what turned out to be a controversial Conservative candidate, a radio host in his day, Andrew Lawton. So Peggy Sattler is our first elected, leading in the other London riding, London Fanshawe. We don't have any results there. And the results around London, both PCs, as we expected. So hope you're tuning in online, on radio, and now back to the really pretty people on TV. That would be Alan and Farah.
Now see that kind of soap job will get you everywhere. Thank you very much, David. I appreciate that. And you just see some of those early results coming in. And I want to take a real quick now at Don Valley. And there's 3 ridings, and Eric touched on a couple of them, but we have results here. This is Don Valley East, where Denzel Min Wong is in the lead, but not by much. I mean, it's early going here, but this could indicate that the Liberal vote has solidified and strengthened, because Mr. Koto is right there. Of course, he's a Liberal minister. Here is Shelley Carroll. We talked about this one previously. She is trailing here, but could the Liberals hold Don Valley North? And I know you know this riding because we talk about it all the time. It is the third of the Don Valleys. Don Valley West, a certain Kathleen Wynne is the representative here. And right now, she is trailing. Now, it is close with 17% of the vote in, but right now, Kathleen Wynne is trailing in her riding.
How important is it for candidates to get their seats? I mean, we're seeing here she's up against somebody who knows the hydro file quite well. So talk to us about that. Deb.
Well, as I said earlier, I think Kathleen Wynne did herself in her own riding, quite frankly, with her announcement on Saturday. We'll see. It is possible that the Conservatives are able to take all 3 of these seats.
And before we get to more on that, here's another leader and an update to Andrea Horvath. We can declare her elected in Hamilton Centre. The leader of the NDP, who first won that riding in a by-election, is back. Tom, to you. Obviously, it's important to have your leader win.
It's important to have the premier with a seat, yes. What's interesting about what we saw when we were looking in the Southwest was exactly how low the Liberal votes were. These RPC NDP fights in London and Sarnia, Windsor, Chatham, Wallaceburg, all those centres. And we're seeing Liberal votes of 5% and 7%, very low. So the NDP has to really work hard.
I just want to interrupt you for 1 second. Take a look at that bottom number. Remember, 63 is the number needed for a majority government, and things are leaning toward the PCs at 68. It's still early, and these are still leading and elected projections. NDP at 33, Liberals at 9, party status 8. That was the main number there at your...
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think to maintain that number, which is 8 or above, I think we need to do well in Thunder Bay. We need to do well in downtown Ottawa, downtown Toronto, and pick up a couple in the 905 and maybe in Eastern Ontario.
But look at that majority meter. That horse race was expected to be very, very close, and we're seeing quite a gap there in terms of a majority. Again, 63. Minority versus majority. Does everybody know what that is? Majority means that the government gets to do what it wants. It's not a government of compromise. So that means it would be a government that would last 4 years. A minority government usually lasts between 18 and 24 months, which means we'd be going back to the polls pretty soon.
I just want to update you on the 2 Thunder Bay ridings, because those are so important that Omar talked about, because those are both Liberal ministers there. And I talked to Andrea Horvath this week, and she thought that you might be able to pick up both of them. You don't have a hope. The PCs don't have a hope up in Thunder Bay. Not a chance.
The polls have closed. I'll say yes.
Okay, but you'll admit it. So here's the latest numbers. I have Bill Morrow just leading with 38.4% to 37.8% for the NDP. Bill Morrow leading in Thunder Bay, Atikokan, incredibly close. And same in Thunder Bay Superior, where Michael Gravel, also a minister, is very, very tight. What does that tell you about the Liberal vote, Tom?
Well, if the Liberal vote stands up, then we're looking at a bigger PC majority. That's the problem. That's exactly the problem, because if the Liberal vote stands up in urban areas where the NDP is strong, then it is draining NDP votes and it's electing PCs.
I don't buy that argument. With all due respect, Tom, you know, the Ontario Liberal Party has won 3 elections in a row, 4 elections in a row, the 3 majorities. The NDP was usually between 20 and 24%. We're probably coming in the low 20s at best tonight. And it looks like the PCs are headed for a majority. You guys could have won a majority if you were able to convince a majority of centrist Ontarians that you're responsible with the economy.
You know what? We're talking about a majority. 72 is what the projection is now for the PCs. I mean, that is not what the NDP wanted today, Tom.
Well, I think it's what the majority of Ontarians wanted today, and that is essentially the problem. We have maybe we're going to get a large majority government out of a 37 or so % of the vote. We don't know. We'll watch.
It's going to be interesting when we see that popular.
It'd be interesting. But the thing here is, again,
I want to cut in right here. We have breaking news. Breaking news, a major development tonight. "16 minutes after the polls close, and Global News is projecting a progressive conservative majority government."
We're going to go right to Jamie Morocker at PC headquarters. He's never served as an MPP, but now he's going to be the premier of the province. Jamie.
Thanks so much, Farah. I've had to put these on because people were cheering so loudly. They are so excited. And boy, did that happen quickly. They were hoping for a majority here at the Congress Center, Ford Nation, and they got that majority. I'm joined by MPP for Parry Sound Muskoka, Tony Clement. Thank you for being here, Tony.
Great to be here.
What do you think of this? It happened very quickly. It is what the polls predicted, but it basically blew the other parties out of the water.
It happened very quickly. And don't forget, this is a political party that hasn't been in this position since 1999 general election. So they haven't had a successful result this century, if I can be very dramatic about it. So, yeah, people are boisterous. They're excited. This is how they wanted it to be. And let's face it, Doug Ford ran a very disciplined, focused campaign that really kept on the message that he wanted to talk about, a different Ontario for the taxpayers, one where things were affordable and one where government was serving the people.
But I mean, Tony, for a politician, he doesn't have as much experience as some of the other candidates who are in the leadership race. Do you think that he is ready to lead the province?
I think he was very smart in the last few days of the campaign. He not only talked about what he wanted to do, but he emphasized the team that he had around him, the current sitting caucus members, but people like Christine Elliott, Caroline Mulroney, Rod Phillips, who are going to be coming in to the Ontario legislature. So it wasn't all about Doug Ford, it was also about the amazing team that he had available to him, in contrast to what the NDP had to offer.
Right, it looks like we'll be seeing Doug Ford as a Premier of Ontario. He's going to make his way down here a little bit later, and we will be speaking with some of his family members. I'll have all that for you from the Congress Centre, but for now I'll send it back inside to you.
Okay, Jamie. Yeah, it must be loud there. Okay, let's go to Mark Carcasole now. He's at NDP headquarters. And Mark, I'm sure the NDP didn't think the gap would be this wide. Just to point out before we go to you, the numbers are fluctuating because not all the polls have reported, but we can say it is a Conservative majority government. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, Farah, I think this was very much unexpected. I mean, people knew that there was a likelihood that Doug Ford would win a majority government, but not at the levels we're seeing right now. I can tell you the mood in here went from a high to an absolute low in a matter of seconds. They started letting in, as we showed you in our last hit, the average everyday people, the voters who were coming in to support the party. There was high optimism. There were cheers, ovations throughout the crowd when it was declared that Andrea Horvath had won her seat. But shortly after that, not 5 minutes later, when it had been declared that Doug Ford had won a majority, just an absolute silence over the crowd. Now, as we watch over this crowd now, there are moments of cheering, there are moments of ovation at times as they cheer for individual, I guess now NDP MPPs who seem to have won their seats. But that jubilation that many were hoping that they would have with an NDP premier, the first one since Bob Rae in 1990, not going to happen this time around. It does appear, though, as though they will be supporting the leader of the official opposition. We'll see how things play out. It is still fairly early, but quite a bit of dejection here. You can see it in some of the faces, especially given how high the hopes were and just how quickly they crashed. Back to you guys on the desk.
Okay, thanks for that, Mark Carcasole. And Alan, you know, it seems like we were just talking to Mark minutes ago, and he was saying there was so much hope in the room. Yeah. Everything happened so fast.
Very quickly, but we do have a developing race right now in Don Valley West. We want to get you up to date on this, where Kathleen Wynne has now pulled back in front in an incredibly close race. Right now, as I'm looking at the most recent numbers, 7,899 votes for Ms. Wynne, 7,532 votes for the PC candidate. Extremely close. This could go back and forth. And as you see, that Liberal number now has been fluctuating. Before it was at 9. Now it's at 7. They need 8 tonight.
All right, we're going to go to Shalima Maharaj. She's at Liberal headquarters. Will they get to that 8 number? Shalima, what is it like there?
That is critical, and everyone is looking at these screens right now. They are glued to them, trying to see if that number is going to come through. Of course, you were talking about Kathleen Wynne's riding. That is being watched very closely. She's supposed to be around here by 10 o'clock to speak to her supporters here. Everyone right now is just stuck to the screens. I can't even begin to describe that. It's not a huge crowd in here. We were told that this room could have roughly about 500 people here. That's certainly not even close to what we've got. We had 30 people at one point. Now we have far more than that. But they are all having a look at these numbers, and they are hoping for the best. They're still fairly early. I mean, I'm looking down at the screen right now. 7 is what we're stuck on at this moment. And so they're really hoping for that 8. That is crucial for them to maintain party status, and they are hoping for the best. And that has been essentially the tone, especially in the last 3 days of the campaign. Being on the bus, they've been going through the 416, through the 905, trying to get as many votes as they possibly can and trying to leave a lasting impression in the dying hours of this campaign. But it really has been quite a fall, especially considering the last 5 years, everything that has gone on. And this has been one uphill battle throughout this entire campaign. It's back to you.
Okay, and again, that number keeps fluctuating. You saw it go back to 8 right now, and all the polls are not in, so you will see the numbers fluctuate just a little bit. But we're going to go to Eric Sorensen. Eric, how did we get here?
Boy, We're still getting there. The Liberals, as you're talking about, they're at 8 right now. One of the things that's helping them are the 2 Thunder Bay ridings may stay Liberal, and that was not some of the things that were expected in the early polling. Even that helps to break things down in a way that breaks nicely for the Conservatives if the NDP and the Liberals are splitting that progressive vote. Let's come on down to Southern Ontario, and you can see that there's still some ridings not reporting, and they are some of the bigger ones. So, when you get into Lake Simcoe area, for example, those could be Conservative ridings too, and they're already around 69 or 70, so that's an advantage to them. But here's where the race is really going the Conservatives' way tonight, down in the Greater Toronto area. Look at how much blue there was. Remember, 2014, it was almost all red. There was one blue Conservative riding. That was Thornhill, right in the middle, just above Toronto. Look at it now, from Vaughan through Richmond Hill, Newmarket, over to Pickering, Uxbridge, all the way into Ajax and Whitby as well. Let's look at the Whitby board just to give you a sense of one of the races where the Conservatives have won, or are winning anyway. It is Rod Phillips leading the NDP, and Joe Dixon, who's been around a long time for the Liberals. He's 78 years old, but Rod Phillips, a high-profile candidate for the Conservatives, leading in Ajax. You can get a sense of the split on the progressive vote there. They're not that far behind if you put them together, but they are losing this race. Mississauga Malton, Deepak Anand leading the NDP by only 2 percentage points. But look at that progressive split, 35 and 20. Together, they have 55% of the vote. If you were thinking of as a progressive, you were trying to stop the Conservatives, that's not happening. And look how close it is. Look how the PCs can kind of come up the middle in some of these ridings. Let's take a look at the popular vote, because this is going to be important tonight. This is where the PCs are now riding higher than many people had expected. The NDP at 34%, the Liberals at 18%. This is going to put the Liberals and the NDP, for example, very close to 60%. There's going to be a conversation when all of this is done amongst progressives saying, how can we have 60, and you add the Greens in, for example, how can we have 65% of the vote on the progressive side of the ledger and lose maybe so badly, at least in the way it's looking tonight? So the popular vote percentage is one of the things that people will be looking at. Back to you, Farah, Alan.
All right, thank you so much, Eric. And I want to look at this riding in Sudbury, because this tells a story about the woes of the Liberals. Sudbury, a real problem area for them, as you know. And there is the Minister of Energy, Glenn Thibault, who actually said in the dying days of the campaign, if you elect me, I'll join whatever party you want. But it didn't work out. Jamie West taking Sudbury back for the NDP. Remember, the NDP won it in 2014, only held it for about 6 months before, of course, the MPP stepped down, and then all those problems.
Wasn't Glenn Thibault an NDP?
He was NDP.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about how we got here. I mean, I know how you're going to say we got here, Deb, but I'm curious to know from you two how you think Doug Ford got a majority government.
Well, clearly there was clearly the majority of Ontarians wanted change, and I think they wanted change going into this election, and I think they made up their minds probably about a year and a half ago. And Mr. Ford, he's not your typical politician. He's a populist. He was something new and fresh to maybe some folks outside of Toronto. But at the end of the day, as Liberals, this is probably going to be a historically bad result for us tonight. So I think we need to be humble. I think we need to talk to Ontarians in the coming days, weeks, months, even years, and see how we can reconnect with the middle class of this province. I think what we're seeing in a lot of these results in suburban ridings across the province is we have lost the middle class. That's something that we're going to have to do some soul searching about. It's not going to be an overnight process. And I think what Mr. Ford was able to do, despite policies that I have extreme disagreements with at times, he was able to successfully speak to middle class Ontarians.
Omar, I'm just going to make a hip-hop reference here and say Kendrick Lamar, you should be listening to Humble. Sit down, be humble, because obviously I think that's what the province has said to the Liberals. Is Doug Ford going to be humble as a leader of this province?
Absolutely. He will recognize that while he looks like he's going to have a majority, obviously, that you never get elected with a majority of the votes usually in our province. That's just the way our electoral system works. And yet you need to govern on behalf of the whole province. And I think you'll see that reflected in his notes tonight when he speaks to the audience at the convention center.
You know, the NDP painted him as the least qualified person to run for premier of this province, but he got the job.
Yeah, it was, well, they tucked him in the background in the last week, and that was probably a good move on the Conservative strategist's part, because the more you looked at Doug Ford, the more you wanted to vote for Andrea Horvath, and that was driving a lot of the conversation.
Deb's shaking her head.
I'm going to push back on that. So often we talk about candidates who are put in bubbles, who don't talk to the people because there might be an accident that happens, there might be something silly said. Doug Ford was with the people throughout this entire campaign. So he may not have done as many media interviews as Andrea Horvath, but he was out talking to voters.
He was
and
with
I think
some
that's
people.
what you've
He was with some people. He was with largely crowds that were partisan supporters. Yeah. But you know,
was he facing the tough questions?
He wasn't facing the tough questions, but clearly it didn't.
Sometimes
clearly
facing
it didn't
them,
matter.
but not answering them.
I think whenever you walk into a crowd, whenever you walk into a crowd, anything can happen, and you guys know that. And that's why so often front runners are kept, as I said, in a bubble. That wasn't the case with Doug Ford at all.
Let me put this out there. I think his best day on the campaign was also his worst day when the Renata Ford lawsuit came out. I think we saw Mr. Ford step to the microphone and speak like a human. He talked about the concern about those two young kids.
Yeah.
And I think that was the best performance we saw from him.
And for those of us who knew and worked with Kathleen Wynne on a daily basis, as I did for a number of years, that's the Kathleen Wynne we would see every day in the office. You know, for the majority of this campaign, except for with the possible exception of her early concession, we just didn't see that Kathleen Wynne, and you know that I think that's been hurting us tonight.
I just want to point out the ticker again. The Liberals, Omar, sitting, I know you'll be interested in this, sitting at 8 right now. We still don't have all the polls reporting, but we do have the Liberals sitting at 8 right now, and that
and some very, very tight margins right now, where Liberals are either up by a couple hundred or behind by a couple hundred.
And some of the polls, we're not going to get until later on.
Glengarry Prescott Russell is a potential Liberal hold. That's been delayed, I believe, until about 10 or 10:30.
Right.
Yeah, York Simcoe, I think, is just closing right now at about 9:30. But Barry Kay standing by with us. He's our election analyst from Wilfrid Laurier. And Barry, as you're crunching these numbers, what are they telling you?
Well, there's a few surprises. Let me mention first, this is a much earlier decision than ever I can remember, and that's largely because of the new voting system. The electronic voting system has produced results much more quickly. The NDP isn't as close to the Conservatives as was expected. Conservatives doing very well, but not always in seats that you would expect. Just in southwestern Ontario, Sarnia was a seat that was thought likely to be picked up by the NDP. They're behind. Kitchener-Conestoga, on the other hand, should have been a safe Conservative seat. It's very close. One other thing I might observe with regard to the Liberals at 8 seats, and if they held 8 seats, they're going to be at least have official party status. But none of those are electeds. Those are all very marginal ridings at the moment. So it's going to be a long night before we're able to determine just how many seats the Liberals are going to be able to pick up.
Yeah, this is one of those interesting situations where we know the major headline, the outcome is going to be a Doug Ford majority government, but it looks, as I just looked through some of these numbers here, we have some very, very tight races, and like you say, those situations where the polls are going to close later, so there's going to be some candidates out there that, you know, the rest of us might be with our heads on the pillow, but they won't even know if they've won or lost.
Certainly up north, yeah, some of those late results. I do think it's fair to suggest, because there's still a number of ridings that aren't even included in the totals that are available on the screen, that the Conservatives are going to be probably at least into the mid-70 range. And that probably means that the NDP at best will be in the low to mid-40 range, where some of the projections, including some that I had done, suggested the NDP would be closer to 50. As for the Liberals, we'll see. The Greens got their 1 seat. I think we're pretty clear that that's it for them tonight. But the Liberal number may vary quite a bit before the night is over.
What are you seeing in terms of popular vote for the Liberals? There's been a lot of discussion, of course, about Kathleen Wynne coming out and saying, I know I'm not going to be premier. What do we see in terms of how did that move the Liberal vote either up or down in this last week?
It's not clear that the Liberal vote is much different than was the case even before that she made the statement. There may be late figures that will suggest something different. The Liberals right now are running, frankly, running better than I anticipated and better than a lot of other people had anticipated. But those are not hard numbers. Those are all leadings. I don't think there's one elected yet among the Liberal seats. And again, it's not all of them are in seats that were expected to win. One of their most popular MPs, Yasser Naqvi in Ottawa Centre, thought to be a prospective future leader of the party. It looks like he's losing to the NDP in that riding.
And of course, he was looking to see if maybe if he could hold on, maybe he would be a future leader of the party. All right, Barry Kay from Wilfrid Laurier, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, Barry Kay mentioned this. History has been made in the province of Ontario, and it is the color green. Let's go to Guelph at the HQ for Green Party leader Mike Schreiner, who's won his seat. Camille.
Yeah, Farah, it's been an electric atmosphere here. For the past 5 to 10 minutes, it's just been nonstop cheering. It's quietened down just a little bit. Great, so I can actually hear you. But before that, it was almost deafening. There was fist pumps, there was hugging, there was lots and lots of cheering as Mike Schreiner here has made history. Global News has called it that he will be the MPP for this riding for Guelph. Traditionally, in the past 15 years, a Liberal MPP has taken Guelph, but now it is the color green. I want to show you these people are all waiting for Mike Schreiner. There has been chants of Mike. Everyone's just waiting in anticipation for Mike Schreiner to show up here, but he did want some privacy and he did want to watch the results come in alone with his family. So he will appear in about 10 to 15 minutes time. That's what we've been told, but a crowded room here. And the word everybody's using here is the word history, Farah.
Yeah, definitely a breakthrough for the Greens. They've been running candidates for decades in the province of Ontario, so this is a really big deal for them. Let's take a look now. Thank you, Camille. We're going to go to our leading and elected board now, get a really close look now at how many seats have been elected. You see there the PCs with 71, the NDP with 40, the Liberals at 8 leading, and the Green, that seat is for sure, that's a Green seat.
Here's your popular vote by party, and this is so important. 40% for the PCs, and obviously they have won a majority. Anytime you see that number north of 35, 38 to 40, that's pretty much a guaranteed progressive conservative majority. And look at that Liberal number at 19%, which is pretty much where it was, as you heard Barry Kay talk about. That was pretty much where it was when Kathleen made that shocking announcement, and it didn't seem to move the number at all.
Now that we know that we have a PC majority, the talk is on who will be filling Doug Ford's front bench. Here's David Akin with some potential PC cabinet ministers.
That's right. And of course, about a week and a half ago, the campaign stopped being about Doug Ford, and we saw some of the bench strength that he's going to rely on to form a cabinet. Let's start with Newmarket Aurora. Christine Elliott, she is elected in Newmarket Aurora, NDP second there. Of course, Christine Elliott is going to be in Doug Ford's cabinet. Once tried to be the leader instead of Doug Ford. She is definitely going to go into cabinet. I'll bet my bottom dollar on that. In Ajax, just next door, Rod Phillips is a first-time MPP, but he's got a lot of boardroom experience. The chair of the Ontario Gaming and Lottery Corporation, Rod Phillips, is leading right now in Ajax, 38%. Monique Hughes has 32% in Ajax. Rod Phillips, 38%. Monique Hughes, NDP, 32%. Let's take a look at Don Valley East. This is going to be a tight race all night. Right now, the current Liberal cabinet minister, Michael Coteau, is leading, but not by much, or they're tied, 35% each with PC candidate Denzel Minnan-Wong. Denzel Minnan-Wong wins. He's almost certainly going into cabinet. That's a 416 cabinet member for the Progressive Conservatives. Got to have that. Lambton Kent Middlesex, another former leadership candidate, didn't run against Doug Ford, ran against Patrick Brown. Monty McNaughton is elected with 55% of the vote. McNaughton elected, NDP second, Liberals third. Lambton Kent Middlesex. Those, one more, Nepean, Lisa MacLeod, she too ran for leadership against Patrick Brown, lost, but she's winning tonight, leading 44% in Nepean. NDP are second, well back at 29%, Liberals third at 20%, and the Greens picking up some as well. I want to look as well at Peterborough-Kawartha. No ministers here, well, maybe, who knows? But remember the bellwether riding we talked to you about at the beginning of the night? Peterborough-Kawartha sends government MPs and nothing but since 1977. Looks like they're doing it again. Dave Smith there.
Live shots of Doug Ford.
Our people right across this province, and I want to thank our team and everyone out there, but I'll be speaking very shortly.
Premier-elect, what do you plan to do first, or your first business?
Well, we'll talk about that tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a press conference tomorrow.
Tell us the moment inside your home when you won. What was that moment like?
Oh, it was great. I'm just very grateful to the people of Ontario. Very grateful.
Did you think you'd get a majority like this?
Something we worked right up to the last minute, and we just appreciate everyone's support. just can't wait to get to the convention.
Tell us
Everybody
about
will see you at the Congress Center.
The Congress Center. We'll meet you over there. And thank you. I appreciate it. I want to thank everyone. Thank you.
So there you have it, Doug Ford right now heading to the Toronto.
So Ford is heading to headquarters right now.
Okay, thank you, Erica. That's Erica Vella, who's there. But there you see him. He is going to be Ontario's 26th Premier, Doug Ford, and he had his wife Carla beside him. His kids, I'm sure, heading to the Congress Centre as well.
I just want to get you an update on a couple of quick things. Kathleen Wynne has once again pulled back out in front again with a narrow lead in Don Valley West. And I have to correct something I said earlier. We were talking about the Minister of Energy, Glenn Thibeault, losing his seat. It turns out I got caught up in a little fake news. I said that he'd said to whoever, if he was elected, he'd join whatever party. That was a satirical news site. Not true.
All right. Okay. We're correcting it, though. That's good.
Yeah.
We want to go to the Congress Centre now. That's where Doug Ford is heading. We're going to go to Global News 640 Toronto's Tasha Carden. She's at Doug Ford headquarters. That's probably the biggest party in town tonight.
Oh, Farah, it is. Every time the numbers jump closer and closer to the 65 mark, the cheers got louder. When they vaulted over to 70, people went completely berserk. It's really going to be a big party. It might be a short night, though, because the results seem so definitive.
You're right, and they came so early there. And what are we expecting? Is he going to be, what is he going to be doing there when he gets there? Giving a speech? Is he going to be giving interviews? What are we expecting tonight, Tasha?
We're not necessarily expecting interviews. We understand he will be giving a press conference tomorrow, but the media were told that was going to be the interaction that we would have. He will be, though, of course, addressing the crowd here, who is very, very excited. A lot of anticipation, a lot of affection for the Ford family among the people who are assembled here, not just, for a change of government. They really have affection for the man himself. So I think he's going to get an amazing welcome for sure.
Okay, thank you for that, Tasha. That's Tasha Carden from Global News Radio 640. We want to head over to Brampton now at the headquarters for the NDP's Gurtan Singh in Brampton East. Karen Lieberman is there. And Karen, what's happening behind you?
It is loud, it is electric. Gurtan Singh pulled it off here in Brampton East. One of the most controversial and one of the most closely watched races in all of the province. Gurtan Singh, he was marred by controversy during the campaign. His leader, Andrea Horvath, stood by him. But of course, we're talking about the little brother of Jagmeet Singh, the federal NDP leader. And he's had his brother on his side this entire time. And he's got this entire room with him too. And it is packed and the music is pumping. And as soon as they heard that their man Gurtan Singh won, they just went wild. They're screaming now. I believe he's coming soon to make a speech. But keep in mind that the other 4 ridings in Brampton, this city made up of 5 provincial ridings, all going blue. So this is not the orange crush that the folks here in Brampton had been hoping for. It'll be interesting to see how Gurtan Singh moves forward with that and what his big brother Jagmeet Singh thinks of that, because obviously he at the federal level hoping for a big win at the provincial level. He was the deputy leader of Andrea Horvath. He looked at her as a mentor, so we're hoping to speak with him as well. But I can tell you that the room here is packed and the people are thrilled at the local level. Back to you.
The bunker dancing hasn't started.
There's no bunker.
So, but there was when Jagmeet won. So it might happen, Karen. You might see that behind you, just so you know. Saw some selfies happening.
We want to take you live now. This is a live shot. Look at this right here. A big black hulking SUV owned by Doug Ford. And we have the follow cam here. Mr. Ford is making his way, of course, from his mom's basement. We just saw him a couple of minutes ago. He came out from the home and got into the big black SUV, and now he's on his way to the Congress Center. We're staying close behind him here, making sure that he's following all the proper highway rules, and there's a live shot of where he will be showing up not too long from now to address an absolutely ecstatic crowd. You know, if you're a progressive conservative, you know heartbreak. And tonight, Deb, you must be feeling pretty good after 4 elections in a row where you managed to squander it, and this time you managed to pull it out.
You had to just put that little dig in before you said it, Alan? Well, no, this is great news, and I've said a number of times tonight, because I believe it, this was an election about change, and we're getting change in the province, and I think it's change for the better.
Deb, can I ask you to put on another hat right now, because you are also the wife of Tim Hudak. In the last provincial election he lost. So what is Andrea Horvath going through right now? What's that like, being a candidate who lost?
Well, it's tough. I mean, my husband did it, not me, but it is very tough. The difference for Tim in 2014 is that he had made the decision, if he didn't win, that he would be stepping down. Tom may have a better perspective on that, on whether Andrea would announce tonight that she's stepping down, or whether she will stay and lead as an official opposition leader. But it is very different if you've decided your career is over. It's a tough speech to give.
And Tom, just before we get your answer on that, I just want to tell people what they're looking at here. This is the shot of the Ford vehicle on its way from the Ford family home on the way to the Toronto Congress Centre. What do you think the future for Andrea Horvath is?
Well, she walked into an election campaign where she was somewhere in the 20s in the polls. She walked into an election campaign where we'd seen polls showing the Ford PCs at 50%, a couple of polls. She turned that around. She got close to Ford. Looks like not close enough, but I'll tell you, Andrea Horvath doubled her seat count tonight, and there is a larger contingent of New Democrats that are going to be in the legislature than there have been, with exception of the one time when they were elected government. So for her team now, she will provide a very, very strong opposition to some of the tax cut, hospital cuts, teacher cuts, and all the cuts to the infrastructure that I think we're going to be looking at in the next 4 years. She will be there. I think people know her now. They know that they can count on her to be a strong fighter and never give up.
Okay, Tom, we want to go to David Aiken now. And David, tell us about some of the ridings where the NDPs have taken over Liberal seats.
Yeah, and so I think, for all the success the NDP is having tonight, I think it is a disappointing night for the NDP. They thought they'd win some more seats, thought they'd have a closer shot at government, but still they're going to take heart in, for example, Davenport. Bit of a grudge match there because the NDP lost that to Kathleen Wynne 4 years ago. Taking it back with style tonight. Margaret Steele's elected, 59% of the vote. Stiles is a former president of the federal NDP, and she's a school board trustee. She's going to be a very effective opposition member, no doubt. Beaches East York, this is another riding that the Liberals won in 2014. It was Arthur Potts 4 years ago, won by a handful of votes to defeat the NDP. This time around, Rima Burns-McGowan elected with 50% of the vote. NDP goes in the Beaches East York column, and Arthur Potts only gets a 4-year career as an MPP. Scarborough Southwest. Now, I can tell you the PCs thought this would be the toughest nut to crack of the 5 Scarborough ridings, and it proved to be. The NDP, Dolly Begum, is elected 45% of the vote in Scarborough Southwest. Federally, it's held by Liberal, the former police chief Bill Blair. Gary Ellis, the PC, finishes second. In Spadina, Fort York, this is another riding that the downtown urban riding, right on the waterfront, that the NDP had to have. Chris Glover elected with 50% of the vote, defeating incumbent Han Dong, just notched 24% of the vote in Spadina, Fort York. Let's take a look at University Rosedale. This was one, and we heard Omar talk about this, where he thought the Liberals might need to take this to get to that magic 8 seats. Doesn't look like it. Jessica Bell elected with 47% of the vote. Gillian Smith, surprisingly not about Gillian Smith, but the Progressive Conservative finishes second in University Rosedale, and Joanne Davis finishes, well, tied, I guess, but somebody's got to finish third in third place. So some great work by the NDP in downtown Toronto. They also have a win right now, looking to win in Ottawa Centre. So those are the good things for the NDP, but I think overall a bit of a disappointing night for the NDP. Alan and Farah.
So they might not need cabinet ministers, but they will need critics. Jessica Bell, as you mentioned, transit. She's been a transit advocate. She could go into the transport role in terms of being a critic. Let's go to Mark Carcasole, though. He's with Andrea Horvath. He's at Andrea Horvath's headquarters, not with Andrea Horvath, who I'm sure is not there yet, Mark.
That's right, Farah. She's not here yet. She's expected to at some point. You were talking about the NDP's shadow cabinet coming up in the next session at Queen's Park. One thing now is that they do have enough MPPs, it looks like, to have, a different MPP, a different shadow minister for each cabinet. The current session that we had a lot of people with multiple portfolios. Now, I'm here with Brad Levine. Brad Levine is an NDP strategist. Brad, I'm going to ask you straight out, what happened tonight? What happened here?
What happened was Andrea Horvath ran a fantastic campaign. She doubled the caucus.
but it just wasn't enough. We'll have to figure out, you know, where are those votes that could have come to us. But she should be so proud of the campaign she's run. For us, these results, you know, while we didn't get there this time, we are poised to take on Doug Ford and the PCs in 4 years' time. We'll hold them to account in Queen's Park for now. But the other thing of note is that now the New Democratic Party is the alternative to the Conservatives in Ontario, and that is a very exciting thing for us. We've never been in that position in a couple of generations, and now we can coalesce that non-Conservative vote in the next election, and we'll get it over the line next time.
Is this still a party, though, that is haunted by the ghost of Bob Rae's reign? Every time I talk to voters doing stories, it's always, well, the NDP, you know, we remember Bob Rae. Is that a specter that still haunts this party?
I don't believe so. You know, for the first time in Ontario's history, there were more millennials eligible to vote than boomers. And those folks weren't even alive back then. So, no, it's not. This was an election where, again, we're going to have to look at these results in the next coming days. But, you know, we wanted more Liberals to join us so that we could defeat Conservative candidates. And we're going to have to look at those raw numbers right now. But, you know, without a doubt, I think Ontario sent parties a message. One, they wanted change. They're going to get change. They've given Mr. Ford a mandate, and congratulations to him and all of his candidates for that. But they also gave us a mandate. Now we're the party of the alternative to the Conservatives. We're going to build on that over the next 4 years.
Brad, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate that. It's Brad Levine, NDP strategist, obviously seeing this as a good day for the NDP, despite the fact that they are basically losing to the PCs in a majority government. But they say this is something that can move ahead with in the future, maybe 4 years down the road. Back to you guys on the desk.
Okay, I'm sure the planning starts tomorrow. We want to talk about the numbers, especially for our friends on Global News Radio that are listening to us. PC's 74 now. There's 40 elected there. The NDP at 37, 25 elected. The Liberals leading in 8 ridings right now.
We're going to get more on those Liberal ridings in just a moment, but there's your popular vote by party. 40% for the PCs, 34% for the NDP, 19% for the Libs, 5% for the Greens, and with that 5%, they pick up a seat. Now, we're talking about tight battles for the Liberals, and here's one we're all watching tonight. Don Valley West, we have 60% of the polls reporting a narrow lead for Kathleen Wynne here. If she can hold on, she will be that all-important, perhaps, 8th Liberal seat.
Now, we want to talk about the big picture here. Eric Sorensen, you've seen him with that pretty cool map. He's in our virtual studio. Talk to us about the big picture, Eric, and how we got here. And look, you can see that divide, north and south.
Yeah, I mean, for folks that are listening on radio, we can tell you that Northern Ontario is quite colorful. There's orange and red and blue, and there's one gray. We should mention that's the new riding of Kiiwetinoong, much like Glengarry, Prescott, Russell over in Eastern Ontario, still in gray because there are a number of ridings that simply the polls were late in closing, and so we're not going to have results until later for those. But that's what Northern Ontario looks like. And if you can't see Southern Ontario, let's have a look at that. It is so blue, almost from Windsor, not Windsor itself, Windsor and Essex and Windsor-Tecumseh, that's all NDP territory right down in the corner there. But after you get outside of the Windsor area, boy, from Sarnia and Lake Huron all the way across through Lake Simcoe and then up to the Ottawa Valley, you can see that it is just all blue, and it is an amazing turnout for the Conservatives there. We do want to show you one little piece of history because we just have to make note of this. In South Central Ontario, bring that out and let's have a look at this for a second. Look at that riding in the middle. That is the first Green, that's Mark Schreiner, first Green ever in Ontario. And there it is in the riding that's surrounded by Wellington, Halton Hills. That is Guelph and Mark Schreiner winning for the Green. They break through, and that will be very important to the Green Party. Let's now go back into Toronto, and we'll see again. This is where the Conservatives have really done so well. As David and Alan and Farah have been talking about, the NDP have a lot of orange in downtown Toronto, but the PCs broke through much of Toronto, down into the Don Valley ridings. The Liberals, we're talking about the Liberals, they're at 8. They need 8, at least 8, to retain official party status. And it is so close for them because they cannot count their chickens yet. Let's look at a couple of examples. One, we think, is in Scarborough-Guildwood. Yes, Mitzi Hunter for the Liberals, leading Roshnan Nalatanam. Look at the score, if you want to call it the score. Look at the votes. Two votes, 5,637 to 5,635. That's Scarborough-Guildwood. We may have one or two other examples. Okay, well, let's leave it at that then and go back to you guys.
Okay, thank you for that. That was 2-vote difference. That's incredible. We want to go to Crystal Gomensing. She is at Caroline Mulrooney's headquarters for York Simcoe, where we understand we're going to get the results a little bit later, Crystal.
Yeah, Farah, the results for Caroline Mulrooney will come in later. We had 2 locations with an incident here in the York Simcoe riding. So the school polling stations were actually shut down because of a police incident. So in one of the locations, people will be voting until 11:35. So things are going to be going for a little while. But I want to show you here, of course, that is Brian Mulrooney, former Prime Minister of Canada. He is here to support his daughter. Brian Mulrooney is, of course, shaking hands, obviously popular with the crowd. His daughter sitting in another room right now. Again, her results won't come in for a long time, probably one of the last ones to actually register because of that incident with 2 of those polling stations. Of course, a lot of cheers here at this location out at Silver Lakes Golf and Country Club. The PC majority led to a big eruption. Not only is Brian Mulrooney here tonight, but we also have Peter Van Loan, the MP for this region, here to support Caroline Mulrooney as well. I don't know if we actually have the cable to do this, but we're going to walk over here a little bit and see if we can actually jump into this conversation. Brian Mulrooney, Crystal Gomensing, Global News.
Well,
what
can't
do you?
say a word.
No, but I am wondering. Doug Ford win.
Yeah, I'll wait for Caroline.
You'll wait for Caroline. Obviously, very proud father right now. Those results later tonight.
Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you. So there we go. So he's here tonight, obviously in support of his daughter, not commenting at this point. A lot of nerves and a lot of people wondering what's going to happen. That was a little earlier on in the night. Right now, this is a very safe blue riding. It has been blue since 2007. The incumbent decided not to run again, but Julie Monroe did endorse Caroline Mulrooney. So, you know, it's very confident riding. In fact, all you have to do is look at the banner when you walk in here, and the picture of Caroline Mulrooney says MPP York Simcoe. So confidence here high, obviously a very jubilant crowd given the decision with the PC majority.
Okay, Crystal, thank you for that. And we'll be checking back with Crystal. But, you know, the former Prime Minister, he was quiet, but I'm sure he was giving his daughter a lot of advice. She's a rookie.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Crystal to go over and pigeonhole him again. I just go over and get him.
Yeah, he wasn't ready to talk, but I'm sure he will be later. Let's take a look at the numbers because I want to see those Liberal seats. Take a look. Now leading in 6 ridings. Again, 8. That's the number that the Liberals want. 8 seats, and we're not there yet, and none have been elected either. For our friends in radio, the PCs sitting at 74, leading and elected.
And there's your popular vote, 40% for the Progressive Conservatives. This is the popular vote province-wide, 34% for the NDP, 19% for the Liberals, and 5% for the Green Party. I want to talk about this riding. Burlington, Jane McKenna. She returns now to Queen's Park after her first winning election in 2011. And Farah, I just want to tell you this quick story. When she wins in 2011, she was a new MPP, and I did an interview with her where I said, you know, listen, Burlington has never voted anything in its history except for Conservative.
Right.
You're going to really have to screw things up to lose. And sure enough, in 2014, not that she was a bad MPP, but she lost.
You jinxed her.
And I've kind of always felt a little guilty.
You've worn it.
Like I was the one who jinxed her. Now she's returning to Queen's Park. The jinx is gone.
The jinx is gone. You feel a lot better?
I feel better. I feel better.
Yeah,
Weight
right.
off my...
Okay. We want to reintroduce our panel to you, our insider panelists. In case you're just joining us here on Global News, we have Deb Hutton, who is a Conservative strategist. We have Tom Parkin with the NDP and Omar Khan with the Liberal Party. Now, let's talk about populism. Okay, I know we've talked about this a little bit earlier, but what does today's win say about populism in this province and, you know, the Trump effect that some people will point to south of the border? Omar.
So Bill Clinton used to say you can have good government without good politics and good politics without good government. Sorry, you could have good politics without good policy and good policy without good government. I'm totally killing that. My point is...
He didn't say it like that exactly.
My point is you have to combine good policy with communications that appeal to average voters. And Mr. Ford was able to do that. There's been Liberals that have been able to do that as well in the past. Jean Chrétien was the master at this. I think this is probably an area where we as Liberals in the coming months and years need to refocus our attention.
Well, what does the Ford family have to say about Mr. Ford as Premier? Here's Randy Ford.
Real exciting.
What was the energy like? Describe it.
Lots of energy. It's wonderful. He deserves it. So do the people of Ontario.
And why does he deserve it? Why do the people deserve it?
Because he's worked hard for it.
All right, folks, we'll see everybody at the Congress Center.
So if you don't know the Ford family well from City Hall, you Ontarians, you're going to get to know the Ford family, because with Doug Ford comes his family. Is very, very close to his family.
Yeah. And Randy Ford?
Not all of them are so close these days, but
be nice, Tom. It's election night.
I wanted to pick up actually on the discussion about populism, because I think it's interesting. If this was Rust Belt United States, and really Southwestern Ontario is struggling with many of the same issues of industrial decline, struggling manufacturing economy. In the United States, we've seen this go entirely to Trump. Those kind of, not just the rural areas, but the urban areas as well. Yet in this election, because we have a Social Democratic Party, it appeals in London, it appeals in Windsor, it appeals in Sarnia, even though it seems like they may not be the winners in Sarnia. There is a significant vote because the affordability of everyday life is an issue for working class people. And if they get frustrated and angry, they vote populism. If there's somebody who comes with a rational plan to help them,
I'm going to give Tom's party some credit.
Tomorrow, the newspapers around the world are going to say one thing, and they're going to say Trumpism has come to Canada.
Right,
is that fair?
And they're wrong. Doug Ford spoke to affordability in a similar manner to Andrea Horvath, but with completely different policies. He said your taxes are too high. The amount you pay for gas is too high. Your electricity bill is too high, and I've got a plan to fix it. That's affordability. That's middle class. And I think next time when we talk to Darrell Bricker, he will show us that the Ford coalition that's voting tonight speaks across all demographics, not just the traditional conservative voter.
And the Ontario Liberal platform had elements that spoke to affordability. We were talking about free preschool for all families across Ontario. That saves you $17,500 a year. A year. I think where we fell down in this campaign, or one of the areas where we fell down, is we weren't able to communicate that, for whatever reason, in a way that connected with ordinary Ontarians. So not people who read binders of policy briefing materials every day, not cabinet committees, but with the voters. Clearly, well, look, we're on the cusp of party status, so clearly something could have been done better. The elements of our platform actually were fairly solid in terms of speaking to issues of affordability, like free tuition, like moving the minimum wage up. You know,
we just want to interrupt you here, and we want to take you now live to Guelph, where Mike Schreiner, who is the first Green MPP ever to win in this province, is beginning to speak to supporters.
I want to thank Sandra for building and putting together such an amazing office that built the community that I wanted this campaign to be. I want to thank Candace, who's been there with me day in and day out for so many years. For so many years. Candace, I hope we've restored your faith in Guelph tonight. Finally, I want to thank somebody who started with me 9 long years ago. Somebody who I have the honor of calling a friend, a colleague, and a confidant, our campaign manager for the province, Becky Smith. You've been there with me every step of the way, Becky. There have been times when I've wondered if we would ever get here. And I've wondered if all the hard work was really worth it. But I knew that one day this moment would arrive.
We are now going to go to Brampton, where Jagmeet Singh and his brother Gurthan Singh are speaking. Here's Jagmeet Singh.
Working day and night on this campaign. An incredible riding and an incredible victory in this riding. The overall election wasn't exactly what we hoped for, but we showed some significant growth in areas we had never won before. We won in new ridings in Brampton, showing that the movement is strong. So without further ado, allow me to introduce your newest member of Provincial Parliament for Brampton East, Gurthan Singh! How's everyone feeling tonight? What an amazing night. I'm so humbled. There you go. I'm so humbled. This is such a beautiful, beautiful evening and such a beautiful, beautiful moment, because it demonstrates what people coming together can do. That despite all the odds, despite this looming fear of a conservative wave, Brampton held strong here in Brampton East. And not just in Brampton East, but in other seats across this city and other seats across this province. We've shown amazing growth for the NDP. And this would not have been possible without this amazing team. I think the best team in this country. You are fantastic. You are amazing. Make some more noise for yourself right now. You guys are fantastic. It also wouldn't be possible without my family. For my father, my mother, my fiancée Saphir. Give her some love. Give her some love.
Gurthan Singh, who will be representing the people of Brampton East. You see him right now high-fiving his brother, who is the federal NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh. Now, let's go to Jamie Morocker. She's at Doug Ford headquarters. We saw Doug Ford leave his home. Let's see if he's arrived yet. Jamie.
Yeah, Farah, he has arrived on site. However, we haven't seen him just yet, but I know the crowd behind me, Ford Nation, they're extremely excited to see Doug Ford, who, of course, we have declared has taken a majority government. I'm joined now by former MPP Frank Cleese, a longtime conservative as well. Frank, you had said not long ago that you thought the online voting system would affect this, but it doesn't look like it has.
Well, despite the voting system at the leadership, they've learned a few lessons. And the people of this province spoke loudly and clearly tonight. This is a great day for Ontario and for the people of Ontario. Doug is going to prove to be a great leader. And I believe the reason that we have the majority that we do today is because of his message. It resonated with the average person in this province. Their pocketbooks were starting to feel the effects of the former government. And the people of this province said enough. And they're looking forward to relief. Looking forward to relief from taxes, from the high cost of hydro. They're looking forward to better health care, better services so that we can improve the quality of life. The reason that I supported Doug Ford for the leadership is because he's a man of courage and knowledge. He has a heart for people and a mind for business, and he's going to bring that to the Premier's office. He has a great team behind him now, very competent people. Good days ahead for the province of Ontario.
You mentioned his business there. There's been allegations that his own family business is failing. We also haven't seen a costed platform at this point. So do you believe Doug Ford when he says, that he has that under control? And, some people who did even voted for him. I spoke to the other day, said they're worried about the potential for cuts.
Well, there's nothing to worry about. I can tell you what he'll cut are the scandals. He will cut the inefficiencies. I have every confidence in Doug Ford, and with regard to allegations, that's what they are. What Doug Ford is going to prove to the people of this province is that he will bring competent leadership, He will ensure that the people of this province are put first, that their interests are put first, and time will prove the voters today right.
That's right, so we'll have to see with time. Thank you so much, Frank Cleese, former MPP and longtime Conservative. You could hear behind me the boos. There has also been cheers. It's a little rowdier than your typical headquarters, but like I said, Doug Ford is here. Ford Nation is ready for them. They're just excited to see him on stage and hear him speak for the first time since announcing this majority government.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Jamie. Of course, we'll be taking that live once it happens. Take a look at this leading and elected board. The PCs are at 71, the NDP at 40, the Liberals at 9 still. Those are leading.
That has not changed all night. As you can see, that tells you just how close it is for any Liberal trying to win tonight. Even though we have 9 leading, none of them have been declared elected yet. 40% is the popular vote for the Progressive Conservatives, 34% for the NDP, 19% for the Liberals, 5% for Green. Check back in again on the Premier, Kathleen Wynne. She is the Premier after all and will be the Premier until she meets with the Lieutenant Governor. And right now, she is narrowly out in front. 70% of those polls reported. We're not prepared quite yet to declare a winner in that riding, but we are close to that. I think we can go now to Charles Sousa, the Minister of Finance, speaking in Mississauga Lakeshore.
I got involved because I wanted my kids to have a good start in life so that they can achieve the maximum amount that they can. I got involved because I wanted my parents to have the care that they needed and the security with dignity that's important to them. And I got involved because I want all our families to have prosperity and achieve the best they can. We have the lowest unemployment in 2 decades. We lead Canada in that growth, and we are investing heavily for them. My dad, when he first came to Canada and he arrived here, he said there's room for everyone, and there is, because look at the diversity that we have here and the accomplishments that we're making. He said there's room for everyone to learn and be at our best. But more importantly, he says there's room for everyone to help each other. All of you are involved in this campaign because you see the desire and the need to help others too. And I congratulate all of you for the work you have been doing all this while.
Okay, that is Charles Sousa, who doesn't look like he got his seat, even though Hazel McCallion endorsed him. Let's go now to Crystal Gomensing. She's at Caroline Mulroney's headquarters with a PC MP.
Yeah, thanks so much, Farah. I'm joined now by Peter Van Loan. He is, of course, the MP for this riding, very knowledgeable about the issues of this area, but also very involved with this PC candidates and really all of the candidates in this election. What is it that Doug Ford offered voters that really connected with them?
Well, for a riding like this, it's a perfect one for Doug Ford's folks because people here are hardworking, want to get ahead. They want government to get out of the way and give them the freedom to succeed. And he's that kind of guy who will speak up for folks who don't have a union representing them, don't have a special interest group, the ordinary person trying to make life better for their family. And that's someone who they sense Doug Ford is on their side. So I expect a good result here, as we've seen across the province.
Well, why did we have that connection? Because there's a lot of people that said he's a rookie, he's controversial. There was the issue with that just came up on Friday with the court document filings and the lawsuits. How did he break through?
Well, I think people saw with him a genuine person, and some of those things are to his credit, that in spite of them, in spite of what people may be throwing his way, he was still able to succeed. And I think people are going to find out that he'll lead a government that outperforms their expectations instead of one like we've seen federally, where it's underperformed their expectations. So I think that's one of the good news foundations on which Doug Ford is building. And I look forward to seeing that government deliver more than people think it will.
Now, one of the things I want to talk to you about, because you are on the federal side here, now we have a Ontario Premier who is a progressive Conservative. We have a Manitoba premier who's a progressive conservative. Of course, we have the Saskatchewan premier who is a PC as well. What kind of weight does that now put on the national scale to have three PC leaders in the country?
Well, for the Federal Conservative Party, it's great, especially with some of the deep breakthroughs in Toronto and the GTA. That helps us organizationally on the ground. On an issues front, you take a look at things like the carbon tax, which is driving up prices of gas and the cost of living for everybody. Folks want to do their bit for the environment, but they know full well the Liberal approach with this carbon tax doesn't do anything to help the environment, but it sure is a big tax hit on them. And now you're going to have a series of governments that are opposing that. That builds strength for that position, and I think that the Liberals federally face a real challenge if they continue to advocate that the way to solve the problems of the environment is to tax hard-working families and make it tougher for them, force them to basically make choices. Do I take the kids to soccer? Do I go to work? What is it that I cut out, since Justin Trudeau wants me to change my behavior? Now you've got that issue frame changing a little bit, with another voice saying, guess what, we're on the side of these hard-pressed taxpayers and we're going to stand up for them.
All right, Peter Van Loan, thank you so much. Of course, we're all waiting to find out how Caroline Mulroney is going to do tonight.
Well, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic it will go well. All the ridings around us have done well. She has worked so hard. She's connected with this community. People love her here, and I think she'll do well tonight.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll throw it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. MP Peter Van Loan represents that riding in Ottawa. Let's talk about the Ottawa area right now. We're going to go right to David Akin, who's zeroing in on close races in Ottawa.
Yeah, the National Capital Region, as we call it. And of course, one of the stories we're still following is, these 8 seats the Liberals are leading in. There's a lot of the National Capital Region. Now, this is one they've lost, and it's Yasser Naqvi. He was the Attorney General, largely seen by many as a potential leadership contender to replace Kathleen Wynne. He may yet, but he loses tonight to Joel Harden. Of the NDP is elected in Ottawa Centre. Federally, that's the riding of our Environment Minister, Catherine McKenna. Ottawa West Nepean, boy, hold on in this one. This has been back and forth all night. A very tight two-way. It was almost a three-way. Bob Shirelli is in third place. He's the incumbent Minister of Infrastructure. Right now, Ottawa West Nepean is looking NDP. Chandra Pasma has 33%. Jeremy Roberts of the PCs has 32%. This was one of those ridings with a nomination problem with the Conservatives. That may affect this race. Let's go to Orleans. Now we're getting to French-speaking Ottawa, just across from Parliament Hill. Orleans right now, Marie-France Lalonde, an incumbent Liberal minister, 39%. It's close. She's up 4 points to the PC's Campbell Montgomery, who has 35%. So that's a close race, and I know Omar over here is Orleans got to have that. How about Ottawa-Vanier? This is a riding that's been Liberal since 1977, and Liberal almost invariably going back 100 years. Nathalie Desrosiers is leading 42%. She's got a good lead over the NDP. Lyra Evans, who has 30%, half the polls have reported there. Now, this is, I think, a shocker. A lot of people in Ottawa are saying Ottawa South could turn blue. Not right now. John Fraser leading. He's been elected. John Fraser has been elected 41%. Let me tell you what John Fraser did after Kathleen Wynne said, I'm not going to win. Fraser started putting up signs that were black and yellow, didn't have the word Liberal on them, and said, vote John Fraser to stop Doug Ford. Looks like people in Ottawa South agreed with them. Alan?
All right, thanks very much. Obviously, that's, McGuinty territory, and the Liberals have held there. But also, you saw what David was just saying, Yasser Naqvi going down to defeat. There's somebody who had some aspirations and was thinking, if he could hold on, then he'd think about perhaps maybe going for the leadership. I mean, there's nothing that says he can't run for the leadership when you're outside of the party, but this is just such a decimation for the Liberals.
I got to interrupt you because I hear that Karen Lieberman, she's at Gurthan Singh's headquarters with his very supportive older brother, Karen.
Absolutely, and he is a very proud older brother right now. Jagmeet Singh, leader of the federal NDP. Congratulations, this is big for your family.
It's big for the city, it's big for Brampton, and for Brampton East to have someone like my brother who's been a passionate defender of all the issues that matter to this riding, to be able to be a voice for that fairness, for that justice. It's going to be something very important for the riding. I also want to say Andrea did an incredible job as leader, won in ridings that we've never won in before, through the party, but more importantly, it's going to be a fierce opposition to this current new government.
Sadly,
maybe realistically a bit of a disappointing showing for the NDP on the provincial stage. So can you speak to that, and also if this might have an impact on the federal NDP leading into 2019?
Well, one of the things that we can point to is there's been significant growth of the movement. The fact that we won in new ridings that we had never won in before, that we never held before. We retook ridings that we had not a presence for a number of years. So that's a positive sign of growth. The party increased its seats by almost twice, by double. So it shows a lot of movement, but it's not the results we would have wanted. We wanted to see a new Democratic government, but with Andrea as leader and the strong opposition, there will be a fierce opposition to some of the proposed cuts that the Conservative government's going to bring forward.
Jagmeet, appreciate it. Thank you, and again, congratulations to your brother. Back to you guys.
Okay, Karen, thanks so much for that. Let's take a look at those numbers again, and we want to see if that Liberal number's moved. Here's the leading and elected board, and there we have it. 2 Liberal seats have been elected, still leading in 6 ridings, and 8 is that magic number. So we're not sure if they've gotten there yet. For our radio friends, 71 for the PCs, 41 for the NDP, and of course that single Green seat.
And there's your popular vote by parties. We look province-wide. These numbers have not shifted a great deal in the last hour or so. The PCs sitting firmly at 40%, but then, as we've been discussing, if you add up all the numbers underneath there, 34% NDP, 19% Lib, 5% Green, you have more on the progressive side of the equation, but the way the Westminster system works, that 40% gets the Progressive Conservatives a majority government.
And a little fun fact here, the lowest popular vote to win a majority in recent history, Bob Rae's NDP in 1990 with 37.6% of the vote. Now, Andrea Horvath really tried to distance herself from Bob Rae. She hoped that would make the difference and get Ontarians to elect her. Did not work out for her tonight. We're going to go to Alex Pearson. She's at Andrea Horvath's headquarters with Global News Radio 640. Alex, I'm sure you have a long list of reasons, but why do you think the NDP didn't make it, didn't get to the showing they wanted tonight?
Well, I think it comes down to the fact that the candidates that presented themselves might not have been the bench strength that people in Ontario feel comfortable with. I mean, it's good enough that Andrea Horvath is known, that people seem to like her, but at the end of the day, government is not just one person, and I think a lot of people were uncomfortable with saying, okay, we're in big trouble, we need change, but am I willing to take a chance on some of the candidates who are more activist? Now, oddly, a lot of those candidates who had made headlines in the campaign actually ended up getting elected. So it'll be interesting to see how they transition into Queen's Park and realize that some of their views may have to be toned down, and whether or not they can kind of bring it a little bit more to the center. They're still very celebratory here, and we're expecting Andrea Horvath probably to come in the next couple of minutes. We're starting to see some of the candidates come in. They did, in fact, do extremely well in Hamilton. They swept almost every seat except for one that was won by PC candidate Donna Skelly. So they have a lot to be very happy about in Steeltown, and they'll be well represented to fight over things like the tariff issue and represent that in Queen's Park. But like I said earlier, either way, they're a winner today because they are forming a fairly healthy majority, although analysts had said it would likely be closer to the 50 mark. But they did win in areas that they've never held before. Now the question is, can they bring themselves a little more center so that they can actually perform and do what they're supposed to do with Doug Ford and his very strong bench, because that's really who they're going up against, and they have to be able to go into question period and knock them back and knock them down. Whether or not they've got that yet, we'll have to see.
We'll be watching. Thanks for that, Alex.
All right, well, let's talk to our insiders now, and I'm just looking at the Scarborough-Guildwood number, and you just pointed this out to me, Omar. Mitzi Hunter there is up by, I count, 3 votes.
3 votes, and in politics we all say GOTV, it means get out the vote.
Yeah.
This shows how important that is. A friend of mine, Jim Pimblett, is actually running the Get Out the Vote operation for Mitzi in that riding, and they've been working on their strategies for the last 2 weeks. And they didn't sleep last night. They were up until midnight or 1 a.m. This shows how important it is, and it shows how important it is to vote. This is a 2-vote margin. It could be the difference between party status and not party status for the Liberals.
There's another whole story in Scarborough. We've got Dolly Begum, I think, elected in Scarborough Southwest, which is important to the Democrats, but right now still not showing the other pickups that they'd hoped for. And again, it's a vote split situation. Some very tight races, 225 votes difference in Scarborough. South Scarborough Rouge Park. The NDP is behind the PCs. And they're also narrowly behind in Scarborough North. Scarborough Centre, only 800 votes.
So all of those Scarboroughs seem very, very tight.
They are very tight between the PCs and the NDP, with the PCs just having those few hundred votes more that has put them over the top.
I'll interrupt you right now. Kathleen Wynne is speaking.
We are now switching to the new premier of this province. There he is, Doug Ford.
Right in front of me, Hazel, thank you. Thank you, Hazel McCallion, Mayor Hazel. Hey, Tony. Thank you so much, my friends. What a response. This is incredible. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I will never forget the trust you put in me. My friends, this victory belongs to you. This victory belongs to the people. And tonight, the people of Ontario have spoken. People from every walk of life, from every corner of this great province, people from every political stripe, you have come together around one common vision of Ontario. You have sent a clear message, a message of hope and prosperity. For the people of this province, a vision of a government that works for the people. My friends, a government that respects you, a government with integrity, a government that will always put you first. My friends, help is here. Our team will work every single day to deliver this vision. We will work every single day for a better Ontario, a better future, and a brighter future for our children. An era of economic growth and prosperity, the likes of which this province has never seen before. Prosperity that will benefit every resident of Ontario. And tonight, we have sent a clear message to the world. Ontario is open for business. My friends, I am so proud of the incredible team that you have sent to Queen's Park, a team of all-stars that will work for you. A team that will always put you first, and we are grateful to all of those who put their names forward, all of those who run under the PC banner. Thank you for your hard work and sacrifice. friends, when we began this journey, I made a commitment to you. I made a commitment to Ontario. I promised to work hard. I promised to run an honest and positive campaign, to focus on the policies that matter to you. I promised to deliver a strong, stable majority government, and together we did that. Together we made history. We have taken back Ontario. We have delivered a government that is for the people. A government that will respect your hard-earned tax dollars. And my friends, the party with the taxpayers' money is over. It's done. But the work has just begun. Our team will get to work immediately. We will deliver on our plan for the people. We will bring accountability, transparency, and integrity to the taxpayers of Ontario. We will reduce your taxes, reduce your gas prices, and keep more money in your pocket. A plan to fix our economy and create good-paying jobs. A plan to invest in the priorities that matter to you. And my friends, together with our skilled team of MPPs, this is what we will deliver. My friends, I want to thank my family for all of your support and love and support. To my wife Carla, my mom Diane, and my 4 girls, you've been my rock. I couldn't have done this without you. And I can tell you, and I know that my brother Rob is looking down from heaven. Just getting chills talking about him right now. I know Rob, he is celebrating with us tonight. We owe so much to Rob's legacy. A legacy of service to the people. A legacy started by my father, Doug Ford Sr., and a legacy that will continue. I want to thank my incredible campaign team, the best political team ever assembled, ever. I can tell you, a skilled and dedicated team who worked hard and stuck together. And I want to thank the thousands and thousands of volunteers from all across Ontario. You left nothing, absolutely, you left everything on the field. My friends, but most of all, I want to thank each of you. I thank you. I want to thank the people of Ontario. I owe everything to you. Your support, your energy, your belief in our cause. You are the ones who kept me going, who energized me at every single stop, and reminded me what's at stake, what we are fighting for. You reminded me to stay humbled and stay focused. You are the reason we are here today. And those who didn't support us, I want you to know that I will work even harder to earn your confidence. I also need to acknowledge my opponents in this race. to Kathleen Wynne and Andrea Horvath. No, guys. No. You fought a hard, very hard campaign, and I'll tell you, Ontario is better for it. We have had our different approaches, but we all share in the same goal of a better Ontario. And I want to work together to deliver on our mandate, a mandate for the people. My friend, a new day has dawned in Ontario, a day of opportunity, a day of prosperity, and a day of growth. We're going to turn this province around so our children and their children will always be proud to call Ontario home. We will make sure Ontario is the greatest place on earth to live, to do business, and to raise a family. And we will make Ontario once again the engine of Canada. My friends, together in 88 short days, we achieved the impossible. We united our party and united our province, and this is your victory. Tonight is your night. I thank you, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you. Thank you.
The new leader of Ontario, Doug Ford, 53 years of age, becomes the newest leader of Ontario and the first progressive conservative since Ernie Eves to lead this province, the first conservative since Mike Harris to win an election in this province. And you see him there being congratulated by his family. The four daughters coming up on stage, he called them his rock.
That's right. That's his wife, Carla, his four daughters, Krista, Kayla, Kara, and Kyla, and his mom there as well, the first person he hugged, as the confetti pours down on Ford Nation.
Our panel is with us here, and Supriya Dwivedi is with us as well. And what we just witnessed, I have never seen in all of my years covering politics. Kathleen Wynne begins to speak with her concession speak. She finishes third, and then she doesn't even begin, and Mr. Ford begins to speak. Normally, these things are coordinated, so that kind of thing doesn't happen. What happened here?
I don't know, and you're right. Usually you do try to coordinate it. It doesn't always work out that way, and I'm hoping it was just an error this evening.
So Kathleen Wynne, whatever is happening tonight, she was the first female elected premier of the province of Ontario. She was the first openly gay leader of a province or a state in North America. I think she deserved to have one last evening on live television across the province. For whatever reason that was taken away from her, if it was a mistake, the Conservatives should apologize.
It seemed graceless to me. I find it stunning, Alan, and to think that somehow over at PC headquarters they don't have televisions on and knew that the incumbent premier was on TV, yet they walked right up and started. I mean, it defies credulity that they just thought that's also not a single mention of hospitals, healthcare, schools, teachers, nurses. This is a cuts agenda.
I mean, yeah.
Not a single mention of that important stuff.
I want to. Can we bring in Supriya Dwivedi? Supriya has joined us on our panel as well. And let me ask you: do you think this was done on purpose? Do you think it was an accident? How do you see this? You've worked on different campaigns on everything.
Yeah, look, I would really like to think this wasn't done on purpose. That implies a level of malice that I don't want to ascribe to any campaign, especially from a major party. I don't think we want to get off on that foot. But I agree with Omar and Tom that this sort of thing is usually coordinated to a much better degree, and it does imply, and this is what a lot of people were worried about with a Doug Ford-led province, is that we're going to start to see the erosion of these political norms that we have. We sort of saw that at City Hall under late Mayor Rob Ford's
and visceral
mayoralty.
partisanship, the idea that you're in a constant campaign. Conservatives, you won. You have a majority government for 4 years. we want to work with you. Liberals want to work with you. I'm sure New Democrats want to work with you to get things done, to help you move, agenda items that we can agree with forward. But come on, guys. This is a sitting premier of the province.
I mean, like you say, the optics of this are terrible.
I'm not going to defend the optics of it at all, but we're leaping to conclusions here that are completely over the top. Ford spoke about his opponents tonight. He spoke about those people who didn't vote for him, as most incoming premiers do. So to talk about political and conventional norms being thrown out the window, I don't think is fair.
He did say that to those who did not vote for me, I will work even harder for you.
Absolutely.
So that was certainly a nod to the majority of people in this province who did not vote for Mr. Ford. I can tell you that as we're looking here at Mr. Ford as he exits the PC headquarters, the party tonight, we are keeping our eye on the Andrea Horvath party. She is expected in a couple of minutes. For those of you upset that you did not see Kathleen Wynne, we recorded that. We will bring you Kathleen Wynne's speech. Obviously, we couldn't show it to you because Mr. Ford was speaking at exactly the same time, which is the issue that we've been talking about tonight. And as I can tell you that as we see Mr. Ford exiting and being congratulated by his supporters, Ms. Horvath should be up in any couple of minutes. In fact, we can take you now.
Andrea Horvath is now arriving at her headquarters in Hamilton. Let's switch to that now. There it is. And this is Andrea Horvath. She was hoping to walk in here as the new premier of the province. She's sitting now as the leader of the official opposition with 40 seats. You can see that at the bottom of the screen in our leading and elected panel. And she's walking in to applause. Let's listen in live.
That's part of her campaign team, and you can see them firing up the crowd. This is none of the people that we spent a lot of time on the bus with, and here is the leader herself. We are live at NDP headquarters. There you see Andrea Horvath making her way in, and just below her you see the tally on the evening. 75 seats for the Progressive Conservatives, 40 for the NDP, 6 for the Liberals, and 1 Green. Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Green Party, my mistake, winning in Guelph tonight. Andrea Horvath being congratulated here. Obviously, this is not the result that she had hoped for. When I spoke to her the day before the vote, she said, she brought in Michael Balagas from the Prairie Provinces as chief of staff and said to him, I want to win. I think I can win. I don't want to be in official opposition. I don't want to be the third party. I want to be the premier.
And she had the team that led to NDP victories in the West behind her. So, she was really obviously in this to win this. Was it her, the candidates she had, some of them controversial figures and controversial things? Was it the campaign? That'll be for a lot of political pundits to speak about. But here she is, Andrea Horvath, the leader of the NDP party.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. I love you too. I love you too.
Most in her own writing.
My friends, from the very start of this campaign, people wanted change. And I could not be more proud that we offered a positive vision. change for the better. New Democrats rejected the politics of fear and cynicism. We rejected that. And we put hope and vision for a better future at the heart of our campaign. And Ontarians have responded like never before. Today, millions of people voted for change for the better. We have won more seats than we have held in a generation. Deeply humbled that Ontarians have asked us to serve as the new official opposition. New voices, new ideas, and a strong team of New Democrats working for you, the people of Ontario. You know, I've spoken with the Premier-designate Ford, and I did congratulate him on his achievement. And I told the Premier-designate that New Democrats will work each and every day for the change that families need to make life better for all of us, for all of us. We will be positive and constructive in our approach, but the vast majority of Ontarians did not vote for cuts to health care, cuts to our schools, and cuts to the services that families are counting on. People did not vote for that. And we will be the voice at Queen's Park for all of those Ontarians. New Democrats will always stand with families, seniors, working people, and young people to protect what matters to most of the people of Ontario. Vous pouvez compter sur nous. To the candidates, campaign teams, and volunteers from every party, thank you. Thank you all for caring so deeply about the future of our province of Ontario. Thank you all so much. To the people of Hamilton, it is the privilege of my life to represent this great city. And I am deeply humbled that you have placed your faith in me yet again. I appreciate it very, very much. And to my family who are all here cheering us on tonight, to my family, especially my son Julian, you mean the world to me. passes. And to my incredible campaign team, thank you for one of the best campaigns we have ever had in our province as New Democrats. To our volunteers, you people in this room, to our volunteers and supporters, to our partners in the labor movement, to our MPPs, and all of our candidates, whether you won or lost tonight, and to our federal leader, Jagmeet Singh, whose tireless work helped us to elect candidates across Ontario. Thank you. Thank you for working so hard to give people hope for a better future in our province. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. Merci beaucoup. I am so proud of every candidate who put their name forward, and I am so proud of every New Democrat who has been elected tonight. Our new MPPs come from every corner of Ontario. They have incredible experience, and they will work for you and your family each and every day. You know, over the course of this campaign, I've met so many people who want change for the better in their lives. You know, I think of a couple of sisters. I think of a couple of sisters that I met, and those sisters are farming sisters. They farm together in Lambton County, and they have never voted for the NDP before. But they believe in dental coverage for everyone, and they joined us this time. I think of a young woman I met in Toronto's West End. She heard of our plans to make housing and childcare more affordable, and she joined us in this election. I think of a senior citizen that I met in Bowmanville in the Durham region who wanted change. And he saw our plan to give people more opportunities, and he joined us. I think of a senior citizen right here in Hamilton who has never volunteered with us before. She heard our plans to ask the richest people to pay a little bit more to make life better for everyone, and she joined us to make that happen. And you know, I think of the incredible people that I met in Kenora and Grassy Narrows. People who literally have to struggle just to access health care, and who have waited literally decades for action to clean up the mercury in the water. I invited them to join us to make change for the better happen together, and I want to thank everyone in Northern Ontario who has placed their trust in us. And I know that these are the people we fight for. People who work hard and believe in a better future for everyone. And they are exactly why the NDP cannot stop here. Fighting for you. We will keep fighting for you. the better, my friends, is more than a slogan. And my friends, we will not rest. We will not stop fighting until we have it, until we have change for the better. We will keep... We will keep fighting for better public health care. We will keep fighting to make your life more affordable. We will keep fighting to give our children a better start and to help young people succeed. My friends, we should be immensely proud of the campaign that we've run. We should be immensely proud. And well, the results did not get us there this time. I invite you to join us, and together we'll keep fighting to bring change for the better to Ontario. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you so very much. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. Miigwech. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Andrea Horvath being congratulated by her family there after an emotional speech, thanking supporters for putting faith in her one more time. And she says she will continue to fight, but in the days ahead, there will be questions about a campaign that looked so promising in the early going, but has fallen short. 40 seats for the NDP. That's a great result, but look at the blue number. That is a strong PC majority.
And I think that gap wasn't expected. I mean, at least the polls leading up to Election Day it wasn't expected that gap would be so large.
And speaking of things that don't have a very large gap, let's take you back to Don Valley West tonight. One of a number of incredibly tight races that we still cannot call. 98% of polls have been reported here. And look at how narrow the lead for Kathleen Wynne is here. Now, she has spoken already. We've been talking about that tonight. And Kathleen Wynne speaking a little bit earlier and saying that she's going to step down as party leader. Omar.
Yeah, I think it's the inevitable outcome of a result that we've seen tonight. This wasn't the result Liberals like myself and others were hoping for when you entered the campaign. I think it's important to note a few things about Ms. Wynne's legacy. So I mentioned earlier she's the first female elected Premier of Ontario. I mentioned earlier she's the first openly gay leader of a state or a province in North America. She's also a premier who led a national fight for pension reform, which has yielded results which will benefit our seniors for time immemorial. She led, along with my former boss, Dr. Eric Hoskins, the Minister of Health, she led a fight for national pharmacare. And she's taken some initial steps towards that by implementing the OHIP Plus program for kids under 25 in Ontario and seniors over the age of 65. She's brought forward a infrastructure program over 10 years worth $160 billion. I think history will judge her, I think, more kindly than the voters did tonight. I personally was very proud to work with her and for her for a number of years. And I think while this result is tough tonight, and I think we Liberals do need to do some soul searching as we move forward, I think she's done quite a bit that she should and can be proud of.
You know what, Omar, you're really close to this, and I want to take a step away because Sabria, sure. You did some work for the Liberal Party in Quebec, but you're not working, obviously, you weren't working on this campaign. What do you think led to the downfall of the Liberals, and what's needed for the Liberal Party to rebuild?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Farah, because everybody's been asking what was the tipping point, essentially, which led to this slide. And to be honest, I don't know if we really have that answer. Some people have posited that it was the Sudbury by-election stuff. Other people have just posited it was like death by like a gajillion cuts, right, with the hydro stuff, and then kind of, scandal after scandal, and then a lot of it was, of course, from her predecessor, but they just couldn't shake it off. I think what the Liberal Party really needs to do now is, have a drink, dust, or a few, dust off your shoulders. The good part of being decimated in this way is that the only way to go is up, right? And I mean, the other good news for the Liberals, I think, is that the NDP, while had a very good showing, clearly, even with the Liberal Party being decimated and the center left very much coalescing around the NDP, was still unable to form government.
So did sorry not sorry and that concession speech that happened before even the election, did that work? Did that not work? What happened?
I think they actually did work to an extent because the fear, I think, in the Liberal campaign, I don't know, Orm, your thoughts, but I think the fear in the Liberal campaign was basically falling out of the media, falling out of the narrative. The sorry not sorry thing, a lot of people interpreted it as, not very well, not very generously, but it still was the story that day. It was like, what the heck does that mean? Mm-hmm. As was the resignation. What the heck just happened? It was a big news story. Her name was out there. It didn't move numbers for her particularly, but the problem was they were moving down steadily, and we did not see that final dip at the end that I think the New Democrats were counting on to deliver these close battles that we're still looking for.
I want to talk a little bit about Kathleen Wynne, and we actually can take you right now to what she said just a little bit earlier tonight, where she said that she's going to step down as Liberal Party leader.
Just be lucky I didn't name all 444 towns and cities and villages, because each one is unique, but it's also striving for the same things: a great future for our community, opportunity for our kids, care for our parents, a decent living. That's why we raised the minimum wage. That's why we fought for. That's why we fought for and won a better Canada pension plan across the country. That's why we're building roads and transit and water systems and schools and hospitals everywhere in this province. That's why your child can get his or her tuition covered if it's hard for you to pay. And that's why your baby's prescription is free, because we're investing in his or her healthy start. Yeah. And that's why your kids can go to full-day kindergarten. And it's why, if you're in an abusive relationship, there are more supports in place for you. That's right. That's why there's more care for your mom and dad who need it in their homes. Government exists to do the things that we can't do ourselves. And that job is never done. That's right. Il y a toujours plus à faire pour rendre vos vies plus faciles, vous donner des opportunités, du succès et un avenir encore plus brillant. It all starts in the community. And I am so proud of all the Liberal MPPs who have been elected tonight. I'm absolutely certain that you will stand up for your communities, and you will fight to make sure every worker and every family in Ontario gets the care and opportunity that they deserve. I am resigning as the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. I know. We're not. I'm going to cry. I have spoken to the party president and asked him to start the process of choosing an interim leader. And it is the right thing to do. There is another generation, and I am passing the torch to that generation. I know that tonight is not the result we were looking for, and no one feels that more sharply than I do. But this is not a moment where any of us should linger. We can't stay here. I hope that you can feel very proud of what we have done together in the past. And
Obviously a very emotional Kathleen Wynne there, announcing to the province that she will step down as the leader of the Liberal Party, and next up is to find an interim leader. And of course, there's another issue here, which is will she win her seat?
That's right. It is so close right now. We want to go right to David Aiken. He's looking poll by poll to see where these numbers might go. David.
That's right. So we showed you this earlier. We can look poll by poll in Kathleen Wynne's riding of Don Valley West. And right now, this is from the Canadian Press, a feed that they're providing. And there are 2 polls that have not reported anything. If you're curious about it, it's polling station 5 in the north and east of the riding. That's York Mills Road here. And in sort of the south of the riding, polling station 25. Which way will they go? Well, you can see that Kathleen Wynne's riding, the Conservative support for John Kernan is in the north part of the riding, and Kathleen Wynne's support, Liberal, is in the southern part. How does it compare to 2014? It's a slightly different looking map. Reorient you now. This is Don Valley West. And in 2014, again, the north went blue and the south went red. Polling, the 2 polls that didn't report is right up here in the corner. You can see where I'm pointing right here. And here's the thing, it's red and blue voters up there. We're probably going blue, but we don't know. But there's red and blue voters in that corner. Back to today's live results. This is the corner that voted red and blue. Right there, polling station 5. We've only got, looking here, 40 votes between Wynne and Kieran. So I suspect this polling station is going to be very interesting for Kathleen Wynne's political life in the near future. Right down here, this polling station 25. Let's go back to 2014. It's right down here. It went red. So those are a lot of Liberal voters. And in fact, tonight, that's where we find Liberal voters. So I'm going to guess 25 is going to stay red. We're going to find out how much blue and how much red is up in the north corner. And again, that's where we're going to decide who's going to win Don Valley West, Kathleen Wynne, or the Conservative, John Kieran. Exciting, isn't it?
Very exciting, very close. There is a room in this city that is looking at those results very closely, and that's Kathleen Wynne's headquarters. Shalima Maharaj is there. And first of all, Shalima, talk us through what the mood was like. What was the audience like? I mean, it seems like Kathleen Wynne came to peace with the fact that her party wouldn't win, but did her supporters?
You know what? There was a bit of a hush in the room once that announcement was made, people sort of looking at each other. It wasn't wholly unexpected by everyone in this room, but it was something that made them sad nonetheless. You could see a number of people here getting quite emotional. Kathleen Wynne at one point actually started talking to her partner Jane. She said, "Jane, without Jane, there is nothing." So it did get incredibly emotional at that point. She actually got on stage towards the end here, Jane, with Kathleen Wynne and a number of other folks, and they were actually dancing to "I'm Still Standing." So she's very much trying to get across the point that I am still here. But of course, this is not the turnout, and this is not the result that we were looking for. She also happened to mention up there that she did call Doug Ford. She did wish him the best, and she also said that she would do her part to make sure that this is as smooth a transition as possible. But again, you heard there, she was talking about the younger generation and sort of allowing them to sort of turn the next page. She said that right now she's asked the party to go ahead and start that search for the next leader. But right now, that is the big question. Who is going to be in a position to do this and potentially be in a position also to be the kind of leader to take the party forward from where it is today?
Okay, thanks for that, Shalima. And you'll remember within the past hour what happened when Wynne took the podium. Just as she got on the podium, Doug Ford, the new premier for this province, went to his podium and spoke. And that's something that you don't usually see. Usually there's an order for how people speak, or when people speak, I should say. So we're going to go to Jamie Morocker. She's at Doug Ford's headquarters with somebody who advises now who's going to be Premier-elect Doug Ford on communications. What happened, Jamie?
Yeah, it was a little bit of an awkward moment, Farah, but was it intentional to figure that out? I have with me Melissa Lantzman. She was the head of the war room, if you will, for Doug Ford. So, Melissa, it was an awkward moment in that the moment Wynne took the stage to give her speech, Ford also took the stage. Was that intentional?
It certainly was not intentional. Look, tonight is a night where we didn't know how fast results would come in. This was the first time in electronic voting, and I'm sure it was an oversight. And all respect to Kathleen Wynne and whatever she was doing tonight.
I have to say, on that note, even when the crowd here, which was a bit of a rowdy crowd, started booing, Doug on stage said, no, don't please don't do that, that sort of thing.
You know what? If you're going to put your name on a ballot and if you're going to take the time away from your family and to put your name forward and make Ontario better, you deserve all the respect in the world, and Doug Ford's going to give you that.
So I mentioned this before, we were talking a little bit early, but communications, I feel, and I think a lot of people feel, played a major role in this campaign. We saw a completely different Doug Ford than we saw when he ran for the mayor of Toronto, a very toned down Doug Ford, if you will. Would you say that the communications department had a big role?
Look, I think you saw a very focused Doug Ford. I think you saw a Doug Ford that is ready to be premier. I think you saw a Doug Ford who's going to focus on the 5 things that we've been talking about this entire campaign, and for that. I do think the communications part was a big part of this campaign, but so was the organization, and so was the management of our of our campaign and our data, and all of the parts that make the campaign go to work together, as well as all of the volunteers that helped run this thing all the way into the end, getting every single last vote at the door.
Now, you mentioned those 5 points, and we did hear Ford hit on those on stage. Ontario open for business.
Absolutely. Ontario open for business, more money in your pocket. We're going to end hallway healthcare. We're going to do things like lower gas prices, lower hydro rates, lower the income tax for the middle class. You know, those are the things he's been talking about this entire campaign, and like you heard him say, help is here.
And voters are going to hold him accountable, of course. He's told me personally that he's going to be accessible and open and forthcoming as premier, and he starts that job, of course, tomorrow. I'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm glad you mentioned that. You know, you and I both covered Doug Ford when he ran for mayor. Remember that? That seems like a lifetime ago. But he was very accessible during that period, right till the end of his campaign. I know this is very different. It's a premier's role versus a mayoral race, but it was very different to see how he wasn't as accessible to the media, and you'll see what happens going forward.
And you know, you heard a lot of that chatter over the course of the campaign. People saying, well, this isn't the Doug Ford that we know. You know, a lot of people were saying that, well, this isn't the guy, he's too bubbled wrapped up. But, you know, he obviously made his points, and he was able to get his message across effectively. Now, you know, the race may be over. You know, the numbers, as you can see on the bottom of the board there, tell the story. A progressive conservative majority. Nothing is going to change that tonight. But we have a number of races that have not yet been called, and they are incredibly close, and they're going to have a big impact, especially for the Liberals. Eric is looking at those for us.
Absolutely, Alan. I mean, that 7 means so much. You know, Premier Wynne, outgoing Premier Wynne, said she is passing the torch. The question is that torch going to flicker very brightly, because they need to get to 8. If we look up in northwestern Ontario, you can see Thunder Bay, Superior North. That's on the sort of Port Arthur side of Thunder Bay. They look like they're holding on to that riding, but look at the next one to it, Thunder Bay, Atikokan. The Liberals need that riding. They're trailing right now. Let's look at that board. Bill Morrow was the cabinet minister for the Liberals in Thunder Bay, Atikokan. But right now, he is trailing by what looks like fewer than 100 votes to Judith Monteith Farrell. Bill Morrow a little bit behind with 99% of the polls reporting. And again, the Liberals need that riding because they're not very close in some others. Coming on out, okay, we're going to go right down into Toronto and see Don Valley West. Again, 98% of the polls reporting. And look how close the race is between Premier Wynne, Kathleen Wynne, and John Kieran. She is ahead by fewer than 50 votes. So that 7 could go to 6 if she weren't to hold on to it. And Scarborough-Guildwood, with 84% of the polls reporting, Mitzi Hunter, she has a lead of about 200 votes over Roshnan Nalatratnam. But, you know, look at the split. Look at the splits that are happening there, that the NDP was very close as well. The Conservatives could win this riding with as low as 33%. And we just want to look at the popular vote to tell you just how historic it is that we're looking at here. With the Liberals, for example, the Liberal vote at 18.3% is lower by far than anything the Liberal Party has done in the history of keeping records in the elections. The NDP, which is 15 points ahead of the Liberals, have only once finished ahead of the Liberals, and that was by 5 points with Bob Rae. So they beat them by 5 points with Bob Rae. They're 15 points ahead of the Liberals now. So Kathleen Wynne says she is passing the torch. It is a tiny torch that she is passing tonight for that rebuild for the Liberal Party. Alan, Farrell.
Okay, Eric, thanks so much for that. Now, the NDP, there was trouble with some of the candidates, some controversies surrounding the candidates. Some of those candidates have got in or now are going to be part of the opposition. David Akin, walk us through a likely NDP shadow cabinet. What does it look like?
I want to first tell you why this is important. I'm going to use a little anecdote from Bob Rae. Bob Rae once told me when he was running the leader of the NDP in Ontario and he was facing David Peterson's government, their strategy in question period every day, pick the weakest minister, focus everybody on that with your most talented people, and pick them off one by one, sort of like the lions chasing after the slowest zebra in the herd. Figure that analogy out. That's why shadow critics, shadow ministers are so important. You want talent to go at the weakest minister in Doug Ford's government. Peter Tabuns might be that guy. There's an experienced sort of guy. Toronto Danforth, he won with 64%. He's been around the block a long time. He knows the game. Peter Tabuns, I'm almost certain, is going to be a significant player in Andrea Horvath's front bench. Let's talk about London West. Peggy Sattler's an incumbent there. I think Peggy Sattler as well is going to be sitting on the front bench, and we're going to have to see sort of what role Andrea Horvath has for a diverse group. She's got a lot of women. She's got people that look like Ontario from all different backgrounds. Michael Mantha, he used to be the executive assistant to the federal MP for Algoma Manitoulin. Carol Hughes spent his life as a political staffer, and this is I think his second election that he's won. He won 2011, now he wins 2014, wins handily. So Michael Mantha from the north. Definitely want to have some people from the north, like Gilles Bisson, people who parlent en français in our bilingual legislature. Well, I don't think we speak two languages in the Ontario legislature, but we have a lot of Franco-Ontarians. Gilles Bisson can speak to them. In Timmins, a very new riding there. It's just the city of Timmins. It used to be Timmins James Bay. So lots of talent, I think, for Andrea Horvath to take a look at. Davenport, Margaret Stiles, she was running the federal NDP. She's been a school board trustee. And I don't know if you know, folks, but in Toronto, it's a big school board. When you're a trustee, it's kind of an important job. So Margaret Stiles definitely going to be on the front bench as well to assist Andrea Horvath. This is a big step as well when you're moving from a school board trustee, a municipal councillor, up to Queen's Park. There's a lot more at stake. And so Horvath also will be thinking, when the NDP wants to present themselves in 4 years to the electorate, she'll want to do it kind of the way Doug Ford did at the end of the campaign. Here's my cabinet. Here are the people who could be a finance minister, a health minister, and folks like Marie and others are those people that Horvath is going to be grooming into a cabinet.
And that might have been what cost her some votes too, David Akin. Maybe people didn't feel like her team was ready to lead. Let's go to Andrea Horvath's headquarters. Mark Carcasole is there. And Mark, what was it like when she gave that emotional and passionate speech?
Yeah, Farah, it was definitely something that, you could tell united the people here, gave them a sense of hope for the future. We spoke earlier to an NDP strategist who said that the goal now is to sort of take this as the victory that it is today and try to build for 4 years from now, try to build some momentum and maybe try to take government 4 years from now. It was very clear in the speech that Andrea Horvath made up at that podium that seems to be the goal. She invited people here to follow them, to keep fighting with them. Key words, key phrases that tell you that in her mind the fight is not over and might lend themselves to the suggestion that she will be staying on for at least another 4 years, may make another run at it 4 years from now. But you know that there's going to be some questions too as to whether she should. This was her third time running. She's able to make a dent this time, but it wasn't necessarily the sizable dent that many people thought that she would. The PC still have a majority. As far as the mood here, you can see behind me the room is clearing out. It's starting to look very much like the room that we had here when we first got here tonight. People are slowly starting to clear out, although you could see off in the distance there. I'm not sure if you can. There is a crush of people. That is where Andrea Horvath is currently doing a media scrum. We will bring that to you as soon as it is completed. We'll record it and tape turn it your way so you can hear what she says. She may very well be being asked in there whether she plans to hang on, how long she plans to stick around. There are several questions, but again, the theme here is that we will keep fighting, we will keep going. This is still a momentous win for the NDP just in the amount of size they've gained at Queen's Park. You heard David Akin talking about the size of the shadow cabinet, the selections that they have to choose from in there that they will now have, as opposed to having some MPPs holding two portfolios in that shadow cabinet. They can spread it out, allow people to specialize a little bit more. So a good step forward for the NDP, and many people here see it that way, but I think there is still some disappointment that that step forward isn't as big of a step. It's not the leap that they were hoping for. Back to you.
Okay, Mark Harkisol in Hamilton. Thank you.
And you know, one thing that's going to be interesting is what happens tomorrow. And first up is 11 a.m. tomorrow. Doug Ford is going to talk to the press. And then after that, the next thing he's going to have to do is think about who he wants to put on his front bench. We talked about the shadow cabinet. Let's talk about who potentially is in a Doug Ford cabinet. And one person I think you're going to see in there is Mr. North Bay himself, Vic Fideli, Mr. Yellow Tie. He only wears yellow ties. You know, I don't know why I'm telling you that.
I do know that.
And Mr. Fideli, of course, has been the finance critic in the past. There he is there. He has been the finance critic in the past. You would likely think that he's in the front bench, and whether or not, though, he picks up that key finance portfolio. Certainly, he's got the experience at the park. He knows the ins and outs, and he's going to be a key member. Who else? What other playing cards do we have? Well, Christine Elliott. Christine Elliott, obviously, this was so key to Mr. Ford midway through the campaign, standing beside her, making sure that she was part of the team. And obviously, you know, she was a former health critic. I've got to think that she's got to be a front runner for the health ministry as Minister of Health, possibly. And we have one more here, Caroline Mulrooney, I believe, obviously another star candidate with some finance background, some high finance in the city of Toronto. I'm thinking, I'm going to guess here, I'm just going to go out on a limb, economic development. I'm just going to pick his cabinet.
It could be.
Okay, I think we have to share some breaking news with you. Let's take a look. This is about Kathleen Wynne's riding.
In this now, we can tell you, we can declare Kathleen Wynne elected. Wow, was that ever a long night for her in Don Valley West? 100% of the polls are in. Look at how close that is. Less than 200 votes. Kathleen Wynne says, I'm not going to be the leader of the Liberal Party, but instead, I am going to be the MPP for Don Valley West.
Okay. We're going to go to Jamie Morocco right now at Doug Ford headquarters, and she has a member of the Ford family with her. Jamie.
Oh, dear.
I absolutely do. I'm sitting here with Doug Ford's nephew, Michael Ford, well known, of course, himself in the political community. Tell me a little bit, Michael, about how Rob Ford would feel to see his brother win.
Oh, well, you know what? We all miss Rob tonight, and I know he's looking down here. So proud of Doug. You know, a little personal story I've been kind of sharing throughout the evening is a little while back. Rob always said that, Doug, you know, you're going to be the premier one day, you know, in passing and in jokes and you know, one a night.
What a night indeed. You were inside the home as you were watching these results come in, and boy, did they come in fast. What was the tone inside the home like?
Well, look, we were just sitting there, and then they were coming in fast and furious, and as we saw I guess the map start to take shape, and how the riding count will fall, and when of course they declare the PC government and the PC majority, it was really overwhelming, because not just our family, but we've been along with thousands of supporters across Ontario, have been outdoor knocking every day, been in the trenches, at the rallies, and for it to all come down to that 9 o'clock hour, and it starts coming in. It's really something else. But tonight's victory isn't our victory; it's a victory for Ontario.
Now, Doug has been known to have this customer service kind of platform. How do you think that will translate as premier?
He will continue to do that, and I can guarantee everyone that. I was fortunate enough to be on the road with him a bit, and when we got back on the bus, he was calling people back, right on his cell phone, answering messages, text messages, and I know he truly cares about that, and it'll be tough. There's 14 million people in Ontario, but I know he will do his best, and he will instill customer service in his team, in the government. And that was one of his commitments in the leadership and now in the general election.
One of the big concerns, I think, from a lot of people was openness. Will he continue to be open once he takes place in office? Do you think that he will be a forthcoming premier?
Oh, absolutely. I think he'll definitely be out there. Look, his message is for the people. That means he's going to be with the people. He'll be out in towns all across Ontario, and he believes in listening to the frontline workers, listening to the people who are on the ground. He said that a million times throughout the campaign, and he will practice what he preaches.
Michael, your family has seen a lot of drama, public drama, over the last couple years. Do you think that Doug will be able to get that under control going forward? I mean, even with most recently the lawsuit that we saw, $16.5 million.
Look, you know what we've been focused on is the people, and it was unfortunate to see that a couple of days before the election. But having said that, I know Doug's focus will be on governing the people. He'll be focused on the people of Ontario. He has an ambitious agenda to lower hydro rates, cut taxes. And bring businesses back into Ontario. And I know he will, tomorrow morning, give that mandate to his team, and off we go.
And that's right. Tomorrow he will be taking office. He will be the Premier of Ontario. Thank you so much for being here, Michael.
My pleasure.
Doug Ford's nephew sitting with us, telling us that Doug Ford was all smiles when he saw that he had a majority government. I'll send it back into you.
I'm sure. Okay, thank you. We are seeing a real divide when it comes to rural and urban ridings. I've mixed the two, as you can see. Right, it is a long night. Let me ask you, is this story, Daryl Brooker of Ipsos, who's been crunching the numbers for us on Global News, is this the tale of two Ontarios we're seeing tonight?
Yeah, we really are. It's basically the downtowns of university towns, including the city of Toronto, versus the rest of the province. And if I could say anything that we're seeing tonight in the results, this is the revenge of commuters. This is people who are living in the suburbs who went Liberal the last time, who have gone overwhelmingly to the Progressive Conservatives this time.
The revenge of the commuter.
In the United States, we talk a lot about red states, blue states, and there's a lot of concern about a division between urban and rural. Are you seeing that kind of thing in Ontario?
Well, no, what we're seeing is a big shift in population. What we're seeing is that the suburbs, the Toronto suburbs, are the fastest growing part of the entire country. Certainly the fastest growing part, obviously, of Ontario, and they're taking on more and more power in terms of our politics. And these are people who drive to work, they're private sector workers, they tend not to necessarily be university educated people. These are the people that really Doug Ford was speaking to in this election campaign, who were worried about those issues of affordability in their day-to-day lives, and a government that didn't seem to be responding to their needs, and they came out overwhelmingly to support change and Doug Ford.
You had said this election is going to come down to the 905. You said that from the first day, and did it?
It absolutely did. If you counted up the seats tonight, it was the sweep of the 905 that gave the Tories their majority.
All right, well, of course, we know that the Ford family is proud, and here's more reaction from the Ford family to Doug Ford's win.
It's no surprise, to be honest. The people have spoken, and I'm just so proud of my father. He's run such an incredible campaign.
What are you guys going to do today?
We're going to celebrate.
Amazing. This is for the people. It's their victory. It is. We celebrate tonight with the people. With the people. It's all about the people. We love them.
This is a family that, would bring people into their backyard, right? Diane Ford's backyard was open. They'd have a barbecue, community barbecue. So that's why, you're hearing that messaging for the people.
Yeah, it's a little bit harder to run a $180 billion government than just by bringing folks into your backyard. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They deserve this win.
Yeah.
It's a solid majority government win, and they've earned the right to govern Ontario for the next 4 years. Look, there are people like Rod Phillips in there and others who I think are going to be potentially solid cabinet ministers. But, I think they're going to learn very fast the complexity of the second largest government in Ontario can't just be managed by having backyard barbecues.
Omar, we've spent a lot of time commiserating with you as you weep into your beer. But let's congratulate the third party, who is now the second party.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there were moments when it looked like she could go, make the whole step and become the first party. And that was very exciting for New Democrats.
Did you peak too early?
I'm not sure if it was peaked too early. I think there were some currents in the last couple of weeks that weren't helpful. But you know what? Here's the most important thing. She doubled her seat count. She has a bigger caucus. She ran a very good campaign. She put out a platform that respected voters by showing everything to people, and she ran on a positive. She ran on her platform She ran on a positive. She didn't get into mudslinging. I can tell you absolutely there were many things that came into the NDP party headquarters. They rarely did anything but then just pass them off to reporters to see if they wanted to deal them. They never wanted to be seen to be playing that kind of politics. I think that's a good move. Now she's so close. Next time.
Yeah, but I want to talk to you about what we just heard from the Ford family. And it gets snickers every time. We love the people, for the people seems simplistic, but on some level it worked.
Right. I mean, we've talked a lot tonight about affordability and people in the 905, as Darryl said, who are feeling under the crunch, whether it's because of their commute, the price of housing, all of those reasons. And so when Ford talks about for the people, he's talking about those policies that people really will feel in their wallet.
Yeah, there's a challenge here because in terms of something that's going to help the average working person, only the removal of the gas tax, which we're not really sure if that can be done or not, would help them because your income tax cut is focused entirely on wealthier people. Lower income people get nothing from that.
Okay,
so
Tom,
yet it's going to cause some health care and,
Tom,
and other
I'm going to have to interrupt you because we do have one more Liberal loss. Take a look.
Yeah, this is Ottawa, West Nepean. Bob Shirelli comes in third here. Around the park, we call him Teflon Bob because in scrums, just nothing sticks to him. He is an incredible performer and has been a real help for the Liberals on the front bench. And he's clearly, obviously, a loss for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and you're looking at that number 7, and in terms of the Liberal seats, 8 for party status. If you're wondering if the Liberals still have party status, we don't know because not all of the polls are in, so we don't have that information yet. What we can show you, though, is a virtual House of Commons, a virtual Ontario legislature, I should say, not House of Commons. That's for next year. Here you go. Here's Eric Sorensen with what that will look like.
Man, look,
Likely.
he's a giant.
What a change we have seen. This is what it looked like in the last election. The Liberals sitting on the government side right over here, where they've been for the last 15 years. And now look what's going to happen as we change governments. The Liberals are going to be thrown not only over here, they're not going to have a whole lot of seats. The Conservatives with Doug Ford and that front bench we were talking about, Christine Elliott, Rod Phillips, maybe Caroline Mulrooney. That is what you're going to be seeing now on the government side of the benches at Queen's Park. Meantime, on the other side, over here, we're going to have maybe a few PCs left over. The NDP becomes the official opposition with Andrea Horvath. And down here at the end, you can see the Liberals with just a rump at this point because they're trying to get from 7 to 8 seats. And, of course, there's that one green as well. And we want to show you a couple of these ridings, just what the drama is for the Liberals still tonight. Thunder Bay Atikokan at 7, they need to win this riding. They are trailing by about 80 votes. And they need to pick that one up. Scarborough-Guildwood, they are ahead by about 200 votes. They need to hold this riding. They have one other bit of hope, and that would be this one, Glengarry Prescott Russell. We are now up to 94% reporting. It is not looking good for them. This is the first time we've had a chance to look at this. Historically, a Liberal riding here. This one, I think we can say already, it's not going to get there. So they need those other ones. They need to hold on to Scarborough-Guildwood. They need to take Thunder Bay Atikokan. That would get them to 8. Otherwise, it is going to be an historic disappointment for the Liberals. And here's one other thought for you and your panel. The Conservatives, in the last 113 years, when they win government, they win at least 2 terms. They don't just come in one and done. They win at least 2 terms. So it's Doug Ford tonight and possibly Doug Ford for a while to come. Back to you.
Wow, possibly till what? 2022 next election? So what would that be? 2026? Wow. Okay. All right. That's a long time. I know. I'm just saying. I'm just doing the math in my head because that seems far out, 8 years from now. Okay. We talked a little bit about Scarborough, and that was Mitzi Hunter's riding, cabinet minister, one of the most trusted cabinet ministers. Tight race there. David Aiken is going to bring us the poll-by-poll results, looking very deep.
Right. So Scarborough-Guildwood, you can look at the bottom of the chiclet there. 7 leading or elected for the Liberals. Well, in fact, it's 6 elected, and this is the one they're leading in. Scarborough-Guildwood, Mitzi Hunter, she's the minister incumbent, and we can see we've only got 62 of 69 polls reporting. This is tonight the poll-by-poll map of Scarborough-Guildwood. I'll let you look at how Scarborough-Guildwood did in 2014. This is Scarborough-Guildwood. All red. I mean, in fact, all of Scarborough. Just a little blue up in the north end. So that was 2014. How are we doing tonight? We still have some polls open. How might those polls go? Well, let's think about the vote along the lakeshore. This is Lake Ontario. The vote along the lakeshore, red or orange. Down here, Scarborough West, more progressive voters. The closer you're going to be to the lake, the more likely you're going to vote Liberal or NDP. The higher up in the riding you go, likely to be blue. Couple of vacant blue seats. Now, Omar is getting some intelligence about what's going on in Scarborough-Gilwyn, and he says they're into some recounts right now. They've got paper ballots, they've got electronic ballots. 1, 2, and that's the way it's going to go till we're probably going to find out tomorrow morning, or certainly late tonight, how this riding went. This is crucial, of course. The Liberals have to have this, and then they have to have Thunder Bay Atikokan, where Bill Morrow was behind by a handful of votes. That is key for the Liberals to get official party status, and I'm sure you guys have explained official party status means you get more resources to do some homework in the House, you get more slots in question period. Generally, life is a lot more pleasant on the opposition benches if you're in a real party. Back to you guys on the desk.
All right, thanks very much. And, you know, we should really take a couple of minutes to talk a little bit more about official party status, because we've been talking about it all night. And David gave us a couple of points about how important it is. You know, official party status, the number has moved over the years. It was 12, then it came down to 8. The NDP had 7 for a while. And Andrea Horvath is actually the one that won a by-election to put you back into official party status. How tough is it to come back if you don't make 8?
I can explain.
You would know.
I know that history. It is very tough, because if you don't have a caucus of whatever the benchmark is, you don't get caucus funding. You are funded just as individual MPPs.
So you don't get that staff.
You don't get the extra staff that do the research, that help you prepare for question period, do policy analysis, communications, and outreach. So it's a big deal. As a caucus gets bigger, of course, it gets more funding.
So it is a big deal, but you know, one thing I'll say about the Ontario Liberal Party tonight. Yes, it was a tough night. We're here. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be back. We have some, at least it's looking like 7, maybe 8, maybe 9. Extremely talented caucus members, some very strong and impressive women, by the way. Natalie Desrosiers, Marie-France Lalonde, potentially Mitzi Hunter. So this is a diverse and strong caucus, small but mighty. And we have a dedicated executive council, of which I'm a member, that will be meeting soon to chart out the next steps for the party. We're not going anywhere. Yes, we want to get official party status, but we are here to stay, and we're going to keep fighting for Ontarians.
Is it worth the Tories to lower that number just so for the next election, you know, the progressive vote doesn't coalesce against the NDP?
We did it before because the number of seats in the legislature had been reduced under Mike Harris. We went from 130 down to 99, I think it settled around 103. And so we reduced it because it made sense. This is a slightly bigger legislature, again, on these new boundaries. So if you were to mirror what we've had traditionally, you'd actually raise the bar, not lower it. So I suspect...
And parties tend to know what's good for the goose is good for the gander. One day we might be down there.
Right.
Should we show some mercy on the Liberals?
And look, this is a party that won, you know, 18 or 19% of the vote province-wide. This is still a major party in this province moving forward.
I'm not sure. I mean, because, David, I think, you know, the Ford campaign may be the kind of crew that, you know, wants to keep their foot firmly on the Liberal neck. That's a bit of their style.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. I want to say thank you so kindly to our panel tonight, also to David Aiken and to Daryl Bricker, all of our supporting cast, the people that helped bring this show for you tonight. And there you see it, Doug Ford, the next Premier of Ontario with his family.
And you know, he beat out Andrea Horvath, he beat out Kathleen Wynne, but he's also their Premier as well. So we'll see what happens at Queen's Park for the next little while. Thank you so much for watching online on globalnews.ca, and to all our friends who are listening to us on Global News Radio.
Have yourself a great night. Thanks for watching.